everyone. Welcome back once again to This Game. Today we're hopefully going to make some good progress on this game. It is getting to be that point where it's very, very long, but we're going to get through this. We can, easily. Hopefully we'll get a bad ending or two, and then we'll beat Kagome's route eventually. This series is going to be officially longer than Everlasting Summer, by the way. It took me 13 streams to beat Everlasting Summer, and we're on stream 13 of this game right now. We still have a whole other girl to get through. But yeah, let's continue on. I can't stop this playthrough. It's too late to back out now, as Nikolai says there. Kagome pursed her lips and lowered her head as if she were guilty of something. Hey, Mafia babe, what's up? Good to see you today. Welcome to even more of this game, and you're first. Woo! So last time Kagome kidnapped Ellie. Kagome was the kidnapper of Ellie. Did you know that, Mafia babe? I forgot if you were here for that or not. She turned into a crazy kidnapper or something. Weird, huh? Yeah, you remember? Alright, good. You're all caught up. But yeah, let's keep on going. Let's finish this thing, eh? Kagome pursed her lips and lowered her head as if she were guilty of something. Yeah, I wonder what. Hurry up before I change my mind. It wasn't that easy to find the homeless person in the center of the Japanese capital at the end of the 20th century, but the lack of choice in a way made my task easier. I took the envelope out of Kagome's hands and said, "Wait here. What is a Japanese hobo even supposed to look like? I don't remember what I last saw someone like that, but nothing came to mind. It's uncommon to beg for money, or build a house out of cardboard in Japan. The image of a stinky, unshaved old man in torn clothes didn't quite match Tokyo's central business district. Someone like that would simply be detained by the police. And then I realized that my plan had begun to fail, along with the hope that Ellie would be released soon. My legs suddenly felt heavy, each step taking a bigger effort than the previous one. I turned around and looked for Kagome, who was patiently observing me. A failure witnessed by another person is a failure and doubled. And then several children around 12 years old by the looks of them ran by me, shouting, "Happily!" I reacted before the thought was fully formed and could be put into words, and grabbed the girl last in line by the arm, freezing in place. "Oni-san, what are you doing?" she asked in a frightening but defiant tone. "Want to make some cash?" I barely managed to force out, "What do I gotta do?" I saw the spark of interest in her eyes. "Nothing difficult. See this letter?" I waved an envelope in front of her nose. "You need to bring this to that tall building, pass it to the woman at the reception desk, and ask that it's given personally to Kobayashi Jun." "If it's so simple, why don't you do it yourself?" I let go of her hand, but the girl kept standing where she was. "Because..." I had to come up with a reason that sounded genuine, but nothing was coming to mind. "Because I kidnapped a person, and the letter has demands for their release." "Seriously?" she exclaimed. "Absolutely." "Damn, this is so cool, I'm in!" "Here, take this. That's for your work." I handed her several folded banknotes. "Alrighty!" The girl took them and ran off to her friend standing nearby, who had been cautiously waiting for the outcome of our conversation. Having said something to them, she ran to the corporation's office, where I hurried back to Kagome. Wow. Glad to know little girls back then were psychopaths, too. Sheesh. "I see you change your plans on the fly." She was, as always, unhappy about something. I improvised. After a couple of minutes, the girl walked out of the huge doors of the office building, and that was the sign that our presence in the square was no longer required. I grabbed Kagome by the arm and dragged her along. Time to go. After we walked a couple of blocks away from the Kobayashi Corporation building, I finally stopped to catch my breath. "Are you sure that she did everything correctly?" "No, but I don't want to check." "You don't need much time to open a letter, read it, and call security." "Yeah, I guess." Kagome looked very satisfied with herself, and that seemed completely inappropriate for the situation. Didn't feel as happy that my plan worked out as I expected. Instead, I was overwhelmed by exhaustion that smelled like an old duvet, like old dust and damp. The only thing I wanted was to go to bed and forget myself in a heavy, cloudy, stuffy dream, and wake up in the middle of the night sweaty, exhausted, and powerless. "Nico-san?" Kagome looked up at me in surprise. "Work's done. Have your fun." And then I quickly walked off in the direction of my home. Stars don't spend loads of effort on an ineffective processing of matter into energy, but convert their elements in their cores directly. People, on the other hand, have to wait for hundreds of millions of years for dinosaur fossils to turn into oil and gas, then extract them, put them in containers to sell to other people so that stoves would work properly, just so a wayward girl can cook dinner. I was sitting behind the kitchen table, desperate for my food to come. Hunger, as always, had pushed all other thoughts out to the background. I didn't know what would happen into my life next. Would I have to meet Ellie, who believed I had a hand in kidnapping every day at school? Meet her, greet her, give her a cute smile, and strike up some small talk? It was hard to imagine that such a thing was possible, but that wasn't even the main issue. Nico-san, please call grandfather over for dinner. All right. I begrudgingly stood up and went to Moriyuki-san, who was sitting motionlessly on the porch, apparently preoccupied with his thoughts. Kagome-chan, you seem happier. Did something good happen? No, nothing much. Kagome answered without any hesitation, flashed a wide smile. Her reply annoyed me, and I had a hard time hiding it. Does this all seem funny to you? What does, Nico-san? Of course, we wouldn't discuss Ellie's kidnappings and the ransom in front of her grandfather. All this, you know what I mean. I don't, Nico-san. She spoke calmly, but her eyes were burning with persistence, so adamant that I had to give up. Sometimes you meet a person that emanates almost tangible willpower that crackles in the air like before a storm, and then you realize it's pointless to argue, because he or she will inevitably do whatever they want. Moreover, you feel you can't help but respect someone like that, no matter what their motives and objectives are. Naturally, it was weird that a normal Japanese girl was making me think that. Kagome-chan, I've totally forgotten, but have we called Auntie Noriko? We have, grandfather. So what did she say? Kagome looked at me as if I were eavesdropping, but still replied to her grandfather. Hey, Eliza. What's up? How you doing today? Welcome to another stream of this game that never seems to end. She said that they are still renovating the house. I knew that the conversation indirectly involved me as well, as renovating the house might mean they had nowhere to go at the moment. You're studying, so might not pay attention. Hey, it's fine. Study hard, alright? What you studying today? What kind of rough test do you have to do or thing? But it would be impolite, to say the least, to start arguing in front of Moriyuki-san. Is that so? The old man replied and focused on the food, as if having forgotten that we also, here. I was always surprised and even scared by this ability of elderly people to disconnect themselves from reality in an instant, but it really wasn't a good time to go over Kagome's housing prospects. It was probably even dangerous to send Iwamura and her grandfather to live somewhere else before we resolved the matter with Ellie. Two besties studying. A driver's license. Ooh, good luck. Mafia Babe's doing homework too. Good luck to the both of you. On your driving and your homeworks. You can do it! What? It appears to me that you wanted to say more. When things start to appear to you, cross yourself. That's a saying we have in Russia. Hey, crusty no-name, what's up? How you doing today as well? Good to see ya. Welcome to Visual Novel. I snapped at her and stared at my plate as well. We finished dinner, but the vague feeling of an oncoming catastrophe was only growing stronger as night approached. Kagome was doing her housework, sitting behind the kotatsu, while I walked back and forth, looking for something that could distract me from my disturbing thoughts. Nico-san, stop running around the place, she said without a hint of anger. Sorry, I don't have your cold blood. I have plenty of walking to do tonight. Tonight? The vague premonitions began to take form. Unless, of course, you think Kobayashi could use a diet. She smirked, clearly satisfied with herself. Ellie did indeed have to be fed. At least once a day. But the memories of yesterday made my head spin. The dark warehouse was a torture chamber in my mind, to which nobody would return on their own free will. Don't think I'm forcing you. Kagome smiled cunningly, and it became unbearably hard to stay in the same room as her. She wasn't just reminding me of my own sin, but making sure I knew it wasn't over yet. You were handling it just fine on your own before. Nico-san, are you that ashamed to be around Kobayashi? Well, you don't seem ashamed in the slightest. As if I would be. She exclaimed with indignation. What are you doing? It's not only about Ellie. It's unacceptable to do to any human being. We are doing, Nico-san. Does it make you feel better that you found an accomplice? We've already talked about that, Nico-san. Yes, but I still don't understand what you want from me. I want help. You promised me to help, don't you remember? Tell me. You always turn my words against me. What, don't you pay attention to what you say? Heading to work. Ooh, good luck at work, Krusty. Whatever you're doing at work today, do it well. And awesomely. It was getting more and more difficult for me to argue with her. I felt guilty about Ellie, scared for my life, but at the same time I couldn't drop everything and put myself in Kobayashi Jun's mercy. And it wasn't just that I didn't believe he didn't have any. Maybe I want to help, but you make me do such things, and most importantly, you leave me no choice. Thought you would pop in and say hi. Thank you. It's very nice of you. I'm glad, you popped in and said hello. Why, you have a choice. I can just as easily go alone. Then why even ask? No reason, just by the way. So you aren't coming with me today? What have you got for her? I also wanted to ask where Kagome got the money, but decided not to. Sure, I worked at the restaurant, but I'm not going to make myself anything gourmet for Kobayashi. She should be happy she isn't starving. Kagome yet again showed extreme hostility toward Ellie. Maybe I'd better go with her, and just to make sure that everything went fine. If anything could be considered fine in this situation. I wish you were stuck in that warehouse for a day. The air there must be stuffy and hot as day and cold at night. Well, bring her a blanket, Kagome said clearly without thinking. Hey, that's a great idea. I immediately ran to the drawers looking for a blanket. Nico-san! Kagome realized what she'd done, but it was too late. It's not that cold there. Didn't it bother you? Didn't it not bother you whether I went with you or not just a minute ago? Fine. Don't forget a pillow, too. Kagome stood up and went to put her grandfather to bed. Today, the trip to the abandoned warehouse came easier to me. Kagome was quiet all the way there, even avoiding looking at me. Not that I was eager to continue our pointless conversation either. Kagome wouldn't change her mind unless something very serious happened. Humans generally try as hard as possible not to change what they believe, even if it goes against common sense. When we approached the warehouse, I felt as if an invisible force stopped me, preventing me from going further. Nico-san? Kagome addressed me for the first time in the last hour. You look like you've just seen a ghost. Well, if Ellie died there because of you, then here you go again. She sighed, straightened up and frowned. Had to go all this way to realize I didn't want to be here at all. Sometimes the right choice takes too much emotional effort. It seems easier to bear with condemnation for your cowardice. Nico-san, do you understand you have to be consistent? You have to realize that you could have released Kobayashi right away, gone to the police, and handed me over to the corporation. But you didn't do any of that. Yet you still keep self-flagellating over your conscience. Well, it's your decision. Just please, for the love of God, find someone else to vent all your negativity at. And why did you drag me here? Became yourself, she exclaimed much louder than necessary, almost disturbing the peace of the giant sleeping warehouses. I guess Kagome was right. I was probably trying to transfer my guilt to someone else, and since there was nobody but her around, I wasn't so much judging Kagome for kidnapping Ellie, as I was just desperately wanting to avoid being involved in it. You know, fine, you're right. Go, I'll wait here. Really? She was genuinely surprised. Yes. I tried to make my voice sound as confident as possible, and apparently it worked. Well, as you wish. I said and entered the warehouse, and it appeared to me like an expression of happiness flashed on her face for just a moment. Being here alone among these industrial ruins wouldn't have been the most pleasant experience even under different circumstances, but just nearby, Ellie was suffering, tied up, and I couldn't help her, which made the entire situation simply unbearable. I couldn't. Why, actually? Who or what was stopping me? Kagome's argument that we were in the same boat and I was just as guilty as her? There were probably some truth to it, but wouldn't it be easier to do nothing then? First choice of most living creatures in danger is to pretend to be dead. I guess Kagome was right. I really wasn't consistent. But I didn't know why and what to do about that. The night was cold, and every time I exhaled, a cloud of steam came out of my mouth. The stars seemed to have hid somewhere, and it suddenly appeared to me that the entire world has been squeezed in a giant box with a little bit of light finding its way from the outside. I was just looking at its dark blue lid, and which little white dots were drawn. Kagome returned faster than I expected. Is everything alright? You can go and check for yourself. I can, but I'm asking you. Everything is in order, as much as it can be. For a while I kept watching her face, trying to find signs of deception, but in the end I turned around and started walking toward the station. Are you coming? The entire way back, I desperately wanted to know where Ellie had asked about me, but I anticipated Kagome's reaction, so I didn't say a word. When we reached the station, she said, "I'll call a taxi. Wait here." I was shifting from one foot to another, trying to warm up. Every step I had taken in the past several days seemed to bring me further and further away from common sense. Felt as if someone was controlling my life, like I was the character in a computer game, and that someone had no intention to get me a happy end. Kagome returned from the telephone box and shrugged. "A taxi will only be here in half an hour. They say it's late. All the cars are busy." "I see." I interrupted her. "Nico-san, don't you feel cold?" "Why? Do you want to offer me your jumper?" Her jumper did indeed look pretty warm, but I'd hardly be able to fit into it. But Kagome seemed to not have noticed my sarcasm. My restaurant was very close to this place. Just recently I thought I'd never get used to it, but now I already miss it. I wonder how my grandfather must feel. To be frank, Moriyuki-san didn't exactly seem devastated by woe. Maybe that was because he's no longer always adequately perceived reality. We have to let Ellie go as soon as possible, I said suddenly, even to myself. What? This is wrong. This shouldn't be. We will, as soon as they release my father. What if... I worked up the courage and continued. What if they don't? Or they do, but Ellie doesn't make it that far? Do you understand that there isn't always a right and wrong solution? Sometimes every option is wrong, and we just have to accept the consequences. What do you mean by that? She asked coldly. I mean, we have to let Ellie go as soon as possible. Are you going to do it now? Kagome tried to speak calmly, but I could hear a bit of anxiety in her voice. No, I probably had at least 24 hours or so, but all the time in the world wouldn't make this decision any easier. To do the right thing and put me and Kagome in danger, we have to prepare. You can't be prepared for death. I had no energy to continue this argument. The taxi arrived after an hour, and by then it had grown significantly colder outside. It was warmer in the car, but all the way home I felt like a side of beef in a refrigerator. When we finally reached home, Kagome immediately ran to the bathroom, but stopped in the doorway. If you want to go first, Nico-san. Could it be that you're cold too, Iwamura-san? I asked her sarcastically and slammed the door of my room much louder than I wanted to. My dream of treating myself to a warm bath wasn't fated to become reality. My darling bed and the duvet my parents had bought from Soviet sailors a couple of years ago enveloped me in warmth I so badly desired, but I still couldn't manage to fall asleep. It seemed that in the process of introspection, I had reached an important point, maybe even the point of no return, but I still didn't know what had to be done next. And if Kagome indeed was planning to drive both of us to the grave, I had to act on my own to avoid that. Except that I didn't even have the outlines of a plan. The next day. This is just bad all around, guys. Just everything right now. I was woken up by Kagome's grumbling and immediately felt I was sick. My head was burning and the surrounding world looked unreal. Nico-san, I understand, but we still have to go to school. I'm sick. I moaned and turned to the other side. Sick? Kagome said with surprise, came closer and touched my forehead. How did you manage to get sick? I'm not going anywhere. Get off me. I had to cover my head with a pillow in order to not hear her anymore. Probably should have taken the bathroom first yesterday. Anyway, Kagome decided not to argue and left me in peace. When I woke up again, the clock read 3 in the afternoon. My fever seemed to be gone, and I generally felt refreshed and rested. Tried to listen to the surrounding sounds. The houses were enveloped by a strange silence, even though Kagome was supposed to be back from school already. Moriyuki-san? Walked into the kitchen, but nobody was there either. The room was empty as well. Sure, Kagome could have been held up for any number of reasons. After all, she was still a class representative, and teachers knew nothing of what happens outside school grounds. Opened the fridge, looked for food, and found a plate with tofu. I didn't seem to remember it being there yesterday. Had Kagome left something for me to eat? Still, I was really hungry, so I ate the tofu without any second thoughts. Even if I had a fever in the morning, I was now miraculously gone. Maybe it was just due to exhaustion, not hypothermia. The memories of the previous night started to come back one after another, like disorganized rows of medieval soldiers heading off for war, following the whims of their petty king. Why do decisions that seem so simple the night before become absolutely unbearable in the morning? After I finished the tofu, I washed the dishes and paced around the kitchen. Would I be better off waiting for Kagome or acting on my own? I decided to release Ellie after all. Was I supposed to tell Iwamura? If things were to go completely wrong, they'd soon come for us. Kagome had the right to know, right? Was treating all the possibilities like they were something abstract, not directly concerning me. This was the only way I could maintain the determination to do what I had to. To imagine what's happening isn't happening to you. What could be easier? It was getting late, but neither Kagome nor Moriyuki-san had returned. What if? The anxious thought, having once entered my mind, stuck there firmly. I could no longer think of anything else. What if while I was sleeping, Ellie had managed to escape somehow? Or the police, people from the corporation, or some random person had come across her? Or the owners of the warehouse returned? Or, why has nobody come for me then? I dashed to the hall and grabbed the phone. Gyosuke had told me that Kagome sat through every class at school and then left. Everything seemed to be in order. I looked out the window, my yard, the road, Himitsu's house. Everything looked normal. And it seemed unbelievable that Kagome and her grandfather had been captured while I had been left to sleep. A doubt that had formed the way to one's heart can be difficult to get rid of. According to the clock, only 5 minutes had passed, but it felt much longer for me. What if they decided that I wasn't going anywhere and they didn't need to hurry? Then I had to run, right now, immediately. In a fit of panic, I leapt out to the street and froze. But run where? And wasn't I being too hot-headed? Of course I couldn't. I could just wait, but if Kagome and her grandfather had been captured, the longer I waited, the more danger I was in. Although there was a sure way to check what really happened. I had to know whether Ellie was still there. I carefully entered the back alley through the hole and walked to the station, constantly looking around. My paranoid delusions, only recently relenting, were once again hounding me. It wasn't that late, so the station was occupied by a crowd of tired Japanese peoples. The train would steadily spit out one group of people in order to take in another one, and the workers leaving the steel monster's belly looked a little happier than the ones just preparing to become its dinner. I was swept up by the flow and felt a bit calmer with all the hustle. When we arrived at the station, night had already descended upon Tokyo. I was just warmer this time, so when I walked into the street breathing in a lungful of the frosty salt-filled air, I didn't feel a nasty shiver go down my spine. Kagome's burnt restaurant was just a 5-minute walk from my location, but I felt zero desire to look at the ashes that night. Turned my collar up and quickly walked towards the warehouses. Finding the right one without Kagome turned out to be no easy task. They all looked similar by default, and the darkness took it a step further, making them look like twin brothers. The warehouse looked exactly like it had last time. There wasn't a soul around, which already implied that Ellie was still there, in the depths of this grim building. I couldn't force myself to go in, and as if I knew something bad would happen. But since I was there, it was too late to retreat. Complete darkness surrounded me as soon as I entered the warehouse. There was no sound, no movement of air. Must have been mice and other critters, but they all seemed to be sleeping, or maybe they just went silent when they heard my footsteps. I fumbled into the darkness trying to find the place where Ellie had been last time. And I found her there after all. The girl was asleep. I stopped, not knowing what to do next. Yeah, there's kind of a big uh-oh happening right now. Wake her up or just leave quietly. I'd achieved my objective, found out Ellie was still there. Plus, I'd still felt ashamed to look her in the eyes and had nothing to say to her. I turned around to leave this horrible place as soon as possible, but blinded by the darkness, kicked an iron rod that responded with a piercing clang. Ellie stretched and opened her eyes. Who's there? Nick, is that you? I froze, trying not to breathe. Nick, I can see it's you. Maybe her eyes had adapted to the darkness over these days. Nick, are you alone? Without that crazy brr. I still couldn't reply. Nick, untie me, I beg you. I know you aren't going along with her voluntarily. Ellie stopped for a moment and then said with a strain in her voice, Untie me, or you'll have to answer my grandfather. You can forget it all here and now, and nobody will suffer, except for that brr. Yes, I had initially come here with the intention to free Ellie, but really, I was almost sure I wouldn't find her. Unfortunately, it often turns out like this. You go do the right thing with a grim look on your face, but deep down you hope everything has already been resolved without you somehow. Nick! Ellie growled in a stranger's voice. I knew I'd find you here. A familiar voice came from behind me, making my heart drop. Uh-oh. I turned around and saw Kagome's silhouette in the darkness, slowly approaching us like a ghost, sailing across the frozen space of the warehouse. You! Ellie's cry turned into a squeal. Nico-san, we almost got our way. You decided to mess everything up. What way did you get? I said with a strain in my voice. Kagome stopped in a spot of moonlight, wrapping her arms around herself and looked at me reproachfully. Nico-san, but I immediately interrupted her. Maybe because I was afraid to hear what she was about to say. Dun dun dun, I know. What's she gonna do? Where have you been the whole day? Where's Moriyuki-san? Let me go. Bastards! Ellie tried to free herself from the ropes, but Kagome seemed to have forgotten about her prisoner. I had things to do. Grandfather was with me. Things? I left nervously. You understand what situation we're in, right? You could have at least left a note. I waited until evening and then you came here immediately. Yes, because I thought you were captured, arrested. Or maybe you just finally got an opportunity to free her. Kagome finally shifted her gaze to Ellie, actively demonstrating extreme disdain toward her. Hey, I'm still here, don't ignore me. Ellie somewhat calmed down. Why do I have to explain myself to you at all? I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I was thinking about it a lot and... Nick! Ellie begged, but I didn't move from my place. What were you thinking about, Nico-san? About yourself as usual, I suppose? Have you thought about my father, me, my feelings? Not all means can be justified by their ends. That's sophistry, Nico-san. You're trying to deprive someone of the only way they can fight back against injustice, justifying it with your old-fashioned ideas of morality. I really am happy that you're in this too. This way you can understand at least some of my feelings. It's always easier to judge from the outside when you're not the one that has to choose whether to give up or drown or try to struggle and reach the shore. But of course you, all of you, have the right to judge what is right and what is not. What's right about the fact that everything went to shoo after my mom died? I kept living like that, tolerating everything, not saying a word, putting up with her gang humiliating me, others ostracizing me. What did I do to deserve that, Nico-san? Before high school, I wasn't any better than anyone else, but I wasn't worse either. I had friends and acquaintances, a place in life, and then... She suddenly broke into tears. I don't want to blame anyone for Mom's death, but sometimes it seems like someone has to be punishing me with all this. I was surprised that Kagome was so open in Ellie's presence, but I didn't dare to interrupt her, and I could have waited patiently until graduation, then forgotten it like a nightmare, but I can't tolerate it anymore after they kidnapped my father. Why am I the only one who has to think about my own actions? Does she or her friends, her grandfather, and his entire damn corporation? They don't need to answer to anyone. They're untouchable. And you, Nico-san, how do you act? You ended up on my side, on the victim's side, but you still came here too. She stopped, heavily breathing in the cold air and exhaled long clouds of steam. And you're still playing by their rules. You blame me, yet you're ashamed of helping me. This is what they want. Why fight people if you can make them fight each other? They teach you what's good and what's bad. They teach you to think things that can't be different. Was it a good act to kidnap my father? Well, it's a corporation, you'd say, if that makes anyone feel better. And if we can't hold them responsible, we just cowardly keep quiet and hide it in a corner? I don't want to and won't live like that. Nick, can't you see she's not well in the head? Ellie finally interrupted Kagome's monologue. Shut up, she shouted in response. You had no right to bully me, no right to take my place, no right to have Nico-san. Kagome kept talking, and at some point it became difficult for me to follow her endless flow of words, but I could clearly understand her mood and emotions. She suddenly gave me a piercing look and left no doubts of her sincerity. Kagome's eyes were gleaming with tears. Just wanted to test you, and you didn't hold for even a half a day. You immediately ran to her. To test me? For a moment it seemed like you understood me, or at least that you'd be able to. Over the past 3 years I forgot how to trust people. Unfortunately for good reasons as it turned out. Test? So Kagome deliberately took her grandfather with her and waited to see how I reacted. And I fell for this simple trick so easily. Maybe in a different situation with a cooler head, I would have questioned the soundness of Kagome's actions. But in the heat of the moment, the sincerity of her words seemed more important. Nick, don't listen to her. Ellie's voice suddenly started to sound resigned. Nico-san, you're probably thinking you're doing the right thing, but that otherwise you'd be eaten by your guilty conscience. Except doing the right thing doesn't entitle you to a reward, and my reward will be rescuing my father. So what do you think that even if you get what you want, you'll still get away with it? Ellie was tied up, but her grim voice was frightened nonetheless. Grandfather will never forgive you, and you can be sure you two won't have a life in Japan. He really does love his granddaughter. Kagome suddenly smirked, turned to Ellie, looked down at her for the first time today. Are you surprised by that? How I'd love to change places with you. See how you'd survive alone without money or status. I at least wouldn't kidnap anyone. Hey, Singy. Welcome to the stream. How goes your tennis boats? Good to see you today. Like your grandfather didn't kidnap my father, right? Or like your friends didn't burn my restaurant down. She looked at me. It's all about ifs again, Nico-san. Meanwhile, I was no longer at all sure that I wanted to let Ellie go. What I wanted to do right now is for Kagome to see. You won't leave me here, Nick, will you? Ellie's voice was reaching deep, into my heart, wounding it deeper than I could bear. But Kagome's monologue had planted a seed of doubt in my mind and made me rethink what had seemed so obvious. Boat goes tennis. Well, I'm glad it does that. The more I hear of your tennis boats, the less sense it makes. But you know, I'll just keep on going along with it. Ha 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 ha. But how you doing today, though? What's up? I'm not the one who started it. I shouldn't be the one to deal with it. My words sounded cowardly, but it seemed to be the best course of action for the time being. We left. My feet carried me outside by themselves into the starry night, under the light of the moon that was emotionlessly observing people's sins. Cold sweat was running down my neck, and I felt a tension in my head, as if someone put a deflated football in there and began to pump it up. Gomi hadn't come out after 10 minutes, and just when I began to worry, I heard footsteps, and my accomplice walked out onto the street with a grim look on her face. Dennis plays tennis on tennis boat. Cool. Who's Dennis? Are you? Have you decided? Decided what? I snapped at her, not looking at her direction. She's still there waiting for you. Hurry up. Kagome smirked and passed by me, resolutely walking away from the warehouse. I had to be honest, at least with myself. If I really wanted to release Ellie, I would have done it right away. Wait! I ran after Kagome. We were quiet all the way to the station, but I finally couldn't hold it. Don't you think that testing me like that isn't fair? But I achieved my purpose. I wanted to see how you'd act in a difficult situation. She sighed and slowed down. And you unfortunately did everything I was afraid you'd do. I thought that you and Moriyuki-san had been captured. What else could I do? Singi says tennis boat. Sounds good. There's a boat. Maybe you can play tennis on that boat. There you go. And of course, first you ran to her. How would Kobayashi help you? That's because... Why do I even have to explain myself to you? Understand, Nico-san, Kagome said in an unexpectedly calm voice. I'm not even accusing you of anything. You're right. Kobayashi is right too. Everyone is right in their own way in this situation. But I'm like a compass. I can't just stay in flux. For me, the world is polar. I either put my all into rescuing my father, or give up and accept my punishment. What else can I do? Go to the police and send a complaint to the prosecutor? Go to an international court? She laughed bitterly. Nico-san, you want me to obey the laws that they don't? For them, kidnapping a person is a trifle, and yet you're ready to crucify me for it. I'm not going to crucify anybody. You just don't understand that I've been facing a choice here. It's all or nothing. It's not even about being radical. They forced these rules on me. I'd already noted that she was constantly talking about them, some disembodied figures. Obviously, she meant the corporation, Kobayashi Jun, and even Ellie, but that impersonal pronoun gave it an unnecessary philosophical spin. But do you understand that in the end there are very real and specific people who suffer for it? Ellie is suffering, and I'm not. Kagome stopped shouting, waved her hands as if trying to slap someone invisible, and burst into tears. I felt sorry for Ellie, even now, but seeing Kagome like this, it was getting more and more difficult to emotionlessly assess her actions. Judge her only from the perspective of a civil society. I came closer, hugged this tired, trapped girl, and pulled her close to me. Nico-san, why are you doing this? Doing what? Why do you run to her first, do everything so that I'd hate you, and now? She seemed to be crying more out of exhaustion than anger. At long last, all the emotions that had been suppressed by anger and wrath found their way out. Nico-san, it's not fair. I was hugging Kagome and looked over her head into the night, at the station seeing the last trains leaving, and wanted this moment to last as long as possible. If not for Ellie and the corporation, we most likely wouldn't have met each other. The string of accidents that many people call fate, it brings completely different people together. And not just that, it puts them together, the same boat, so they can only reach the shore through their combined effort. The same boat, the same tennis boat, right, Singy? What about my feelings? In reality, I was no longer facing a choice between Kagome and Ellie. I had turned Ellie down earlier. The choice now was between Kagome and common sense. Kagome or myself? You're asking me to do something I'd never have done under different circumstances, and for a different person? Kagome sobbed. What do you mean? I pretended I didn't understand her. If Kobayashi asked you to help kidnap someone, she wouldn't. I smirked, but Kagome grabbed my jacket tighter and pulled it down. You only think about yourself. If I really was, they wouldn't even be here, for one. But I didn't say anything out loud, and instead kept playing the role of Kagome's support. Okay. What are you planning to do next? It was getting too cold to keep standing in the same place. Tomorrow, Kagome turned away from me, took a step back, wiped her eyes, and shook her head. Tomorrow we'll act according to the plan. Hope you have one. Luckily, it wasn't that late, so we made it to the station in time and didn't have to call a taxi. Really didn't want to sit next to Kagome for another hour or two. I deliberately took the seat opposite to her, and we didn't even look at each other the whole way back. Perhaps we were accomplices now, but I still needed some time to digest everything. The house greeted us with the deafening sound of Moriyama-san's snore. Where were you hiding him? What does it matter? Kagome shrugged, took off her shoes, walked past me into the kitchen. I lingered a bit, thinking of what to talk with her about for the rest of the evening. We wouldn't just sit quietly until bedtime, would we? But Kagome had already started cooking dinner. I didn't want to eat at all, but I wanted to disappoint her even less, so I didn't say I was hungry. Wasn't hungry. You know, all this reminds me of a film, somehow, or its never-released sequel, to be more precise. The protagonists had defeated all the world's evil and returned to their normal lives in their 6-tatami apartment. Have you ever thought about where they get the money from? Who pays for pays them their salary? I'm not interested in comics, she replied in a bored voice. And manga? Kagome seemed somehow unreachable, mature to me, and there I was with my comics and manga. Eat. Finally, the simple dinner was ready. Kidnapper or not, you still need to eat. How did Ellie feel eating once a day? These thoughts made me sick, and I couldn't even look at the food. You don't want it? Got a stomach ache. Why all of a sudden? I don't know. It just hurts. I abruptly stood up, but immediately froze. Thank you, I'll eat it in the morning. And I quickly walked to my room. Maybe I was just punishing myself over and over for my indecisiveness. There should be a certain script for detective stories in real life, right? In the end, Kagome, both a victim and a criminal, and I, hopefully just a witness who are living under the same roof. Ellie couldn't be blamed for anything, but seemed to be suffering more than anyone else. Only Kobayashi Jun seemed to be following the script properly. People aren't interested in boring truth, and always prefer a complicated explanation to a simple one. Somehow it seems to us that the abundance of details as well as a twisted plot are more trustworthy than a boring everyday story. Kidnapping Ellie was a detective story, but the rest, although it looked like a tragedy to me, would have probably resembled a comedy to an outsider. But if my role really wasn't written in a script somewhere, could I change it? Could I change it better? Kagome's plans was ridiculously simple. We just had to wait for them to leave the documents in a mailbox, grab them, and then get out of there as quickly as possible. Spent a good deal of time looking for a mailbox she could force open easily. Even in theory, it all seemed dangerous. I woken up before Kagome did when I was already sitting in the kitchen, idly poking the cold dinner I'd ignored yesterday with my chopsticks. It was Saturday, which meant that apart from enacting Kagome's suicidal plan, I had absolutely nothing to do. She finally appeared in the kitchen around 8 o'clock. She passed by me on her way to the bathroom, yawning, but stopped in the doorway. Hiko-san, you're up early today. Good morning. Good morning, and you're a bit late. Moriyuki-san already woke up and left to meet his friends. She looked at me confused. Didn't you know? No, of course I did. He told me. I let him go. Billy held back a giggle. Even considering her grandfather's age, this treatment was still a little condescending. What? Don't you want to say something? Nothing at all. Kagome decided not to cook anything, but instead just heated up yesterday's dinner. By then I'd already had my share of it. Her cooking deserved the highest praise, even cold. So, having finished breakfast, Kagome slowly looked around and was searching for a spy hiding in the kitchen. So, let's go through our plan once again. Except it doesn't sound like much of a plan, more like a suicide attempt. She frowned. What do you suggest then? At the very least, we need a car. Do you have a driver's license? I didn't respond immediately, having anticipated Kagome's reaction. I don't, but I know someone who has both a license and a car. And that someone is... She drawled questioningly. Kyosuke answered briefly, stood up, and walked back and forth around the kitchen, avoiding looking in her eyes. Can you come up with a better idea? Kagome suddenly snorted. Not in such a short amount of time. Think for yourself. We wouldn't have any chance of escaping pursuit on foot, but a car would give us an advantage. Really believe that they wouldn't be able to catch up to a car. I finally stopped and looked at Kagome. She was observing me carefully, but she didn't look angry. Of course a car won't be a silver bullet, but if we at least have a chance. I didn't like the plan from the very beginning, but you'd do anything for Kobayashi's sake. She didn't let me finish, although I didn't know what I was going to say in the first place. But if it helps us get everything over and done with quickly and return to a normal life. And what is it you're going to do next, Nico-san? Kagome kept asking questions in a tone that sounded like this conversation didn't concern her at all. Graduate from school and live somehow. I didn't want to talk about what would happen next, as there were too many unresolved matters at hand. Did you consider that Kobayashi is right, that her grandfather won't forgive us for kidnapping his daughter, no matter what, whether we eventually let her go or not? Oui. I mocked her, counting my steps. But Nico-san, Kobayashi saw you too. Do you enjoy saying that? Not at all, but I'm disgusted to see you scrambling around. Scrambling? Why not finish the job first and figure out how to live? The worst part was, if she was correct, I would have to resolve that matter one way or another and then bear responsibility for it. Not only for myself, but also for Kagome. And there was no way to escape that, even if I decided to stay home. That's why I'm saying we might need help. I want to be done with it and stay alive and out of prison if possible. Apparently she was quite against involving Kyosuke. Was he the problem, or did Kagome not want to drag any strangers into this? What if I asked someone else, not Kyosuke? Who then? She smirked, stood up, and began to collect the plates. I don't know what you're hoping for, but to me the future appears quite grim. What is revenge beyond satisfying our primal instincts? It's a signal to others not to treat us that way. If Kobayashi Jun lets his enemies get away with things like kidnapping his granddaughter, how long would he stay at the top? Fine. It's not just about protecting his honor, but also the interest of the corporation. Fine. What would its head look like if... Fine. Kagome shouted. What? You think we need a car? Let's get a car. Just spare me the lectures. Alright. Really wanted to prove I was right, even though I realized there was no point to it. Well, why are you standing there? Go and call your friend. I had to seize the moment, so I ran to the phone. Kyosuke listened to my plan unexpectedly, calmingly, not interrupting me even once, and only asked if we were sure about our plan. I had to say we had never been more sure about anything, and that plan was rock solid, so with no weak points. I didn't know to what extent he really wanted to help me, and to what extent it all seemed fair a game to him. Different circumstances would have dragged Kyosuke into such a dangerous affair. Only had a choice. I came back to the kitchen where Kagome was pensively fiddling with a balaclava, trying it on this way and that. I see you prepared. Looks good, huh? I made it out of a ski mask. On the other hand, the idea seemed to be prudent and logical. On the other, the mask looked ridiculous, as if it came from a kid's manga. Did you arrange everything with him? I did. Then what are you unhappy about? I don't understand how dangerous it is. The car was your idea. I know, but still. Fine, what next? We were waiting for Kyosuke sitting on my porch. He must be from a wealthy family if he had a license and a car at his age. I don't like to count other people's money. I'm just stating a fact, Nico-san, she said with feigned indignation. I guess I really have never been an envious person, but Kagome. Yesterday's fight with Ellie clearly showed she believed life had been unfair to her, to say the least. Soon I heard the sound of a running engine. Yosuke's car stopped in the gate, and for some reason he honked at us. Why are you honking? We're coming! Kyosuke awkwardly got out of the driver's seat, ran to the passenger's door, and moved the seat back so that we could get in. Nick, Iwamura-san! He gave us a dumb smile. Kagome only nodded silently in response. There was only one more problem. A big problem. Kyosuke didn't know that we were the ones holding Ellie captive. Moreover, I had no idea how to tell them. Kyosuke-san, about Kobayashi. Kagome suddenly spoke as if she were about to explain something insignificant. Wait. Waved my hand at her, grabbed Kyosuke by the shoulder and pulled him aside. Nick? He looked up at me perplexed. You see, the thing is, you heard Ellie is missing, right? Of course you have. Well, it turns out we know where she is, but don't worry. His facial expression gave more and more focus as I spoke, and we'll inform her grandfather about that once we get the documents we need. Are you saying that Ellie-sama was kidnapped by Iwamura-san? I sighed desperately and closed my eyes. But she's okay? Of course, everything's fine. Kyosuke remained quiet for a moment, clearly thinking of what to say. Nick, I was glad to help you if it was for a good cause, but this is too much. Kidnapping a person, especially Ellie-sama? I set my foot angrily. Well, what do you want from me? I only found out a few days ago. You got to understand, it's too late to retreat. Even if we released her now, what would we achieve? If everything works out and we get the documents, we'll at least have a guarantee we're safe. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place, but what's the point of talking about it now? It's not like I can convince Iwamura. Are you doing this for Iwamura-san? He asked me in an unexpectedly adult tone. I'm also in danger. Nick, that's not what I'm talking about. It was hard for me to answer Kyosuke's question, not even because I didn't want to deceive him. Just didn't know the right answer either, like when you're not sure of yourself before an important exam. Even if that's true, what does it change? Well, that might alleviate your guilt a bit, since you're doing it all for love. Quiet, you. I hissed at him and looked at Kagome, but she was just examining Kyosuke's car with a bored look on her face. Nobody here was talking about love. We're just companions in misfortune, in a sense. I couldn't tell Kyosuke that Kagome had made me her accomplice without my consent. Being your usual self, huh, Nick? What about Himitsu-chan, Catherine-san? Enough already. Put my hand over his mouth and let out a forced laughter to conceal my own awkwardness. We stopped on the street next to the one with the mailbox we needed. Kagome's road is crazy. I know, right? Kidnapping someone? We're on the run. Are we gonna die, Mafia babe? Am I dead? Were they just going to wait patiently, then capture and torture us to find Ellie's location? And the so-called plan to Kagome's made their job significantly easier. So Nick, Kyosuke was visibly nervous. What? Nico-san, we'll do this according to the plan. God, this music sounds really... Oh, it is loud. Let's lower the volume a bit. Holy crap. And I forgot to pull up the guide, by the way. Love, money, rock and roll guide. Okay? There's a guide. Alright, here we go. According to the plan, die, no arrested, maybe. Yeah, maybe arrested, probably. According to the plan, we had to drive to the mailbox, quickly retrieve the documents, and floor it out of there. You know, this doesn't seem like a good idea to me now. Do you have better suggestions? No, but... I sighed and looked at Kyosuke. He sat with his hands tightly wrapped gripping the wheel, pretending to carefully study something in the distance. We get caught and they'll start to beat information out of us. You're sure you can keep it? I can't say with any confidence I'll keep my mouth shut. I don't see any point in playing the hero. And it's not even about that. After we tell them where Ellie is, do you think they'll just let us go? Why do you always think about failure? Because that's how humans are. We consider the chance of failure first. People didn't think like that, there wouldn't be anybody to enjoy all the future successes. Fine, just sit here, I'll go myself. Tried to squeeze past me, but it was impossible to do so in such a small car. I'm not telling you to go alone, just... whatever. Kyosuke, get us closer. We stepped to the start of the street with the mailbox. It was a normal Saturday morning in a quiet Sokyo suburb. There was no one outside, everything was serene and quiet. I don't see anybody, Kagome said impatiently. I also haven't noticed anyone following us. Do you think the people working for the corporation are amateurs enough that they let us to spot them? I immediately remembered Kagemaru. Nico-san, nothing will change if we just stay here and wait. We get caught, then we will. Nick, I'm ready whenever. Kyosuke grabbed the wheel tighter. I couldn't quite find the courage yet, as if some invisible force was keeping me in the car. My legs felt like jelly, and my hands desperately didn't want to grab the handle to open the door. What was the point of being afraid when we were almost at the goal? If they weren't following us, by now they would already know who was behind Ellie's kidnapping, which meant we had no choice to escape either way. Alright, fine. I exhaled and gripped my mask. How long are you going to keep dragging your feet? I turned around and realized that judging by Kagome's facial expression, I wouldn't manage to hold her off any longer. Oh. She literally fought her way past me, waving her arms and kicking her legs, and ran to the mailbox, forgetting the baklava in the car. Maybe she hadn't forgotten it and simply stopped caring if whoever was watching us recognized her. I swallowed, desperately trying to suppress the lump in my throat. I turned my gaze to Kyosuke. He sat behind the wheel, gripping it tightly, as if he was drowning and it were all a life buoy. Meanwhile, Kagome had reached the mailbox, quickly opened it, searched the insides, looked back at us, and I could tell by her facial expression that it was empty. Examined the mailbox again, took out several letters and newspapers, almost put her head in there, but to no avail. Finally, I came to my senses and started waving my hands desperately, urging her to get back in the car. Fortunately, Kagome noticed and stopped her pointless search. It was happening as if in slow motion, her hair flapping in the wind, her heels flying high over the pavement with every step, just a little bit left. Drive, I whispered, unable to speak louder. What? Kyosuke didn't hear me clearly. Drive. I don't know what's happening, but we've got to get out of here as soon as possible. Thank God Kyosuke understood the second time. His car's tires squealed and he drove toward Kagome. Get in. I had no time to move the back seat, so I just hopped out of the car, grabbed Kagome in my arms, and hopped back in together with her. That was a rousing success. No one was pursuing us, which was strange in itself. We decided to stay in Kyosuke's apartment. You know, with the Nausicaa poster and the everything here. Maybe it wasn't the best option, but since I dragged her into it anyway, the whole plan turned out to be an absolute disaster. And most importantly, it was the complete mystery why nobody was there waiting for us. Maybe you got the wrong place, Kyosuke asked timidly. I stared at him angrily. Kagome did the same. Every one of us seemed to want to say so much that nobody knew what to start with. Maybe you two would like something to drink. I have cola and iced tea. Water too, actually. Kyosuke managed to somehow ease the tension. When he walked out of the room, I took the initiative. I told you it was a shitty plan. We're alive. What more could you ask for? Kagome snapped morbidly and without any hesitation fell onto Kyosuke's bed. Apparently Kyobayashi Jun has figured it all out. What makes you think that? No one else would be that interested in Akira Shinji. Of course, there was still the chance that he had been kidnapped by Arena and Co., but they could have done that much sooner without involving Ellie. We may have only made the situation worse. What do you mean? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I walked back and forth across the room, constantly stumbling over things strewn about the place. Maybe you shouldn't have tried to get your father out that way. Easy for you to say. Kagome replied even too calmly. True, as a person who had nothing left to lose, it was hard for me to argue with her. If my parents hadn't died in the car accident and their lives had been in danger, would I have been standing there all knowing and brave? Fine, I understand, but... Here I am. Kyosuke opened the door with a kick and entered the room holding a tray with glasses. Got something to eat too? What would you like? He gave me a silly smile. Whatever you have, as much as possible. After Kyosuke left again, I continued. Nobody followed us, at least they haven't captured us. Kagome seemed to be completely lost in thought. Doesn't it surprise you at all? Should it? Yes, it should. God damn it, what are we supposed to do next? I wish I knew the answer. This morning I had been ready for anything, that we'd been taken captive, that there would actually be documents in the mailbox, that we'd find nothing, but in the end, I couldn't find it in me to come to terms with what had happened and moved on. If it was some great ploy of Kobayashi Jun's, it was beyond my understanding. Although it rather looked like a sequence of absolute unbelievable coincidences. Kagome remained stubbornly silent. Didn't you even allow for the thought of that your stupid idea might fail? Stupid? She repeated quietly as if she was ready to cry. Okay, don't. That's not what I meant. I mean, to be honest, I was pretty bad at comforting people. Yes, I could repeat the formal apologies and dole out supporting words like a record, but it always seemed empty and fake to me. Okay. My blabbering wasn't going to help bring her father back, even if it was genuine. Besides, I kept going at her for that stupid plan of hers, even though I knew it was pointless, and I wasn't really offering an alternative. Perhaps it was really worth a shot, but we tried and it didn't work, and now we have to move on somehow. I'm really worried by the fact that we were basically ignored. Nobody gave us the documents, followed us, or tried to capture us. Maybe Kobayashi-Jun never got the letter in the first place. It was as if I was talking to myself, and if that's the case, we might be quite lucky. Lucky, Nico-san? Kagome asked maliciously, finally looking up at me. You don't seem to care at all about what happens to my dad. I didn't care. I was about to shout at her, but I managed to get my emotions back under control in the last moment. Do you think I'd be standing here? Well, you're only doing it for Kobayashi's sake. And it's for Kobayashi's sake that I left her tied up in that burping warehouse, right? Kagome again deemed it unnecessary to respond. Thinking about it, I really didn't know what I was risking my life for. Especially by following Kagome's stupid plans. Asking for a ransom in a mailbox, who would even think of this? Just then Kyosuke returned. I don't want to interrupt, but... Then don't interrupt! We exclaimed as one. Kyosuke closed the door while I looked at Kagome and smiled. Maybe she wanted to return the smile, but held herself back. Since we mentioned Ellie, so it is about Kobayashi. She interrupted me and abruptly stood up. We should at least go check on her. You go if you need to. I'd expected more or less that reaction, but still sighed on reflex. Do you understand that aside from not getting our letter, the second most logical assumption would be that the corporation had already found Ellie? That's why they didn't even bother to catch us. In reality, I didn't believe that myself. Kobayashi-Jun was a very consistent person and would avenge the kidnapping of his granddaughter one way or another. Or even if they found Ellie, they don't know that we were behind her kidnapping. Yeah. Then time works against us. Stay here, I'll call you later. Rushed to the hall, quickly explained everything to Kyosuke and asked him to look after Kagome. Kagemaru and his colleagues had already found Ellie. They'd soon start hunting us down. I didn't know what to do in such a case, but I was sure that forewarned is forearmed. This time I was heading for that damn warehouse in a totally different mood. Yesterday I hadn't wanted Ellie to be there, now I wasn't so sure. What are you dragging your feet for? Hurry up! I heard a familiar voice behind my back. Kagome caught up to me and started walking by my side. What are you doing here? I was genuinely surprised. I'm not going to save my dad if I just sit around doing nothing. So I decided to help you one last time. Help me. I smirked and quickened my pace. Aren't you ashamed at all? No, she said thoughtfully. Why would I be bothered about what happens to Kobayashi now, when my plan has failed? But she didn't do anything to you. What's the point of this conversation? What are you going to do now, Nico-san? Will you let her go? Sure, if that's what I wanted the most right now, but it didn't seem right to tell Kagome as much. They got the note but didn't meet our demands. What else can I do? Keep pushing the idea with the documents and ransom? Show up in Kobayashi-Jun's office and give him our demands personally? But you aren't unhappy about it? Of course, it's good to not feel like a criminal anymore, you know? Except, I really doubt her granddad will be satisfied with it. As soon as Ellie tells her who really kidnapped her, do you really think we can return to a normal life? My father is still being held hostage by the corporation. I don't even know if he's alive. What kind of normal life can there be? She looked me in the eyes with a lingering question in her gaze. Right, sorry, I didn't think about that. You didn't think? Kagome came closer than Japanese decency allowed, then suddenly smiled. It was getting colder outside with every passing day, and though the sun was heating the surface well enough to wear light clothes during the day, at night the earth cooled down and the morning frost reminded of the coming winter more and more clearly. Nico-san! I spaced out for a moment, trying not to look at Kagome and not to think of how to answer her. Fine, you probably haven't decided yet what a normal life is for you. As if anything depends on my decisions. I really didn't know what would happen next. In a way, so far luck was on my side, but it would be foolish to think that Ellie's granddaughter would just forgive me and forget about it. Didn't Kagome realize that herself? You could say your behavior was reckless and she herself wasn't too smart. You could, but of course you'd have to have some luck in life, no two ways about it. You got lucky when you kidnapped Ellie. Lucky? She scoffed but kept walking next to me. What else would you call it? The right calculation? God, it doesn't matter. Don't nitpick, as if the choice of word changes anything. I'm just saying that you also had some luck. Here's a simple example for you. Most players at the stock market have the same knowledge and information, but only a few of them win in the end. What does that have to do with anything? What I mean is it's entirely possible that you weren't the only one who tried to kidnap Ellie, but you were the one who succeeded. They have something to be proud of. Kagome smirked and finally stepped away from me. Suit yourself. We finally approached the station and I lost track of my thoughts, but by this point I was glad for the opportunity to be quiet for a while. The train brought us to our destination slowly, as if contemplating something. There were fewer people in the carriage than I expected, so Kagome and I didn't have to force our way through a crowd, and we found our seats in peace. Although Saturday wasn't the best day to hurry anywhere, all that serenity and regularity suddenly made me anxious. It seemed that everything was happening so unhurriedly only because it was the last road we would ever take. People sentenced to execution usually don't run to the gallows either. When we finally arrived and walked outside, I asked Kagome, "Aren't you afraid at all?" "Of what?" "If Kobayashi Jun got the note at all." I sighed and gathered my courage. "I mean, there's a chance we won't find Ellie there." Kagome thought about it, but looked more annoyed than surprised. The thought did cross my mind, too. "You told me that, Kyosuke, that you don't care." "I don't." She agreed calmly. "All right, let's go." Walked so quickly that she had to run to catch up with me. "Hey." We almost reached the warehouse when Kagome carefully took me by hand and stopped me. "Listen, Nico-san, maybe I seem petulant to you sometimes, but I don't mean it. And since we don't have much time left to spend together, I want to tell you..." "Wait," I whispered. "Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions, the consequences of which are obviously right away." "Wait, you." I grabbed her, pulled her over, and pulled my hand over her mouth. "Look, cars with sirens were parked outside the warehouse, policemen walking around. Well, here we are." "Nico-san?" Kagome looked at me with genuine fear in her eyes. "Uh-oh, that's what I say. Just as I said. Let's get out of here, just don't run." I walked normally, but my heart was beating like crazy. When approaching the station, I stopped and looked around to see whether somebody was expecting us there. But the fish market district looked lively and busy as always. Even if Kobayashi Corporation's people were hiding somewhere, wouldn't it be easy to spot them? That's what I was talking about. I'm not doomsdaying, I'm just stating facts. If you want to tell me that it's all my fault, Nico-san, I'm not saying anything. It's not your fault at all. She said louder than needed, but there was no reproach or affront in her voice. "Well then, what do we do now? Dad?" She wrapped her arms around her body and lowered her head. "Don't just go imagining the worst. They might have just not received the note. Your father is probably alright. Under Kobayashi's kidnapping, they might have decided that he posed a threat and it was too dangerous to keep him alive." There was logic in her words, but at this moment I was mostly concerned about myself. At least we're safe at Kyosuke's place. Or not. I grabbed her by the hand again and confidently headed for the nearest telephone box. But Kagome didn't let me dial the number and grab the receiver first. What if they had the phones tapped? What if all phones in the city? I smirked and she pursued her lips, but then grew sad and lowered her head, still gripping the receiver tightly. "Want to call Kyosuke-san?" "Well, yeah. What about grandfather?" "Grandfather," I repeated as if I just heard a word in a foreign language for the first time. "Moriyuki-san is, of course, a good person, but doesn't present much value as a hostage." "Nico-san," Kagome said in a wilting voice, looking at the telephone and the characters scribbled sloppily on its metal. "We can't just leave him on his own." "Yeah, right. Of course, it would have been improper to say your grandfather was totally senile, but unfortunately, he really couldn't be left on his own. Ask Kyosuke to take care of him." "Kyosuke-san?" It was more hope in Kagome's voice than skepticism. "Yeah, why not? He's a decent guy when it comes to serious stuff. Maybe everything will work out on its own somehow? I never expected fatalism like that from you." I laughed, but waiting to take the receiver out of her hands. "I mean, we can't protect everyone. God, apart from us, nobody even needs any protection." She responded, just put the receiver back and stepped away. "Fine." Dialed Kyosuke's number and briefly explained the situation. "What are we going to do next?" she asked us after I hung up. I realized that I had to make a decision. Kagome expected a clear plan of action from me. I was even flattered in a way. Such a confident girl was relying on a simple idiot like me. But neither of us had what it took to fight the corporation on equal ground. We had to escape. That seemed like the best option. I told you, what difference does it really make whether they found Ellie themselves or we let her go? What matters is who kidnapped her, who kept her hostage for so long, hungry and cold. "Nico-san!" Kagome finally looked up to me, and I saw the reproach in her eyes. Fine, I agree it doesn't make any sense to point fingers after the fact, but she looked so vulnerable that I barely managed to say the next few words. "Thought you were ready for everything." Had she really been that confident in her ability to predict the future? I didn't think they'd find Kobayashi so quickly. Kagome whispered very quietly, and I asked her to more for the sake of formality. "What?" "I didn't think they'd find Kobayashi so quickly." She suddenly shouted with tears in her eyes. Everything was supposed to go according to the plan, and he yet again makes us suffer. Who's he? Kagome didn't respond, just timidly grabbing my sleeve. What do we do next, Nico-san? My pride walked hand in hand with responsibility. No matter what the reason for the abrupt change in Kagome's mood was, at this moment the girl expected decisive action from me. Better leave Tokyo, at least for a time. What about grandfather? Your grandfather would approve. Kyosuke will take care of him. Besides, the corporation has no interest in him. Think about it. If they were, he would have been taken together with your father back then. Kagome had nothing to respond with to that, so she didn't object. You just have to lay low for a time until everything goes back to normal. In reality, I was in the situation everyone imagines but no one believes will actually come. In Russia, many save for a so-called Black Day without realizing that if they really did come, their money wouldn't be enough, or most likely no money in the world could help at all. With the breakdown of the banking system, banknotes will just become paper, and gold and diamonds that used to be worth millions will be exchanged for pieces of bread. Are there even extreme circumstances you can just confidently prepare for? Maybe if I had a bunker in the mountains and years worth of food reserves, or even better, a spaceship with warp engines and matter replicators. Thousands of people all around the globe get into car accidents, become the victims of criminals or disease every day. I'd saved my life, but I had no idea what to do with it next. And now matter how much I would scold myself for everything that happened, every happening part of my own actions. These past few weeks I felt like a blindfolded man walking down a narrow path along the mountain. One wrong step and the fall wouldn't be long. Where should we go? I drew up a map of Japan in my imagination, only to realize my knowledge of geography was far too limited for that trick. Although I still knew some places outside Tokyo. There's a village. I've been there with my parents when I was little. It's quite far, and I hope they won't be looking for us there. What about money? To call Kyosuke. Nobody was following us, and after a couple of hours we were standing in front of the familiar bar that I had hoped I wasn't seeing it for the last time. That's all I have, Nick. Even that wasn't easy to find. Handed over a pretty thin envelope for me. Thank you for it. How's my grandfather? Did you remember everything we said? Kagome asked anxiously. We agreed that I'd give the key to my house to Kyosuke and visit Moriyuki-san several times a day. Plus, Kagome had given a note for her grandfather to a simple-minded friend who we now had to rely on for so much. I'll drop by your place right after we say goodbye. You can count on me. Iwamura-san? He bowed to Kagome for some reason, accepting the note. Wouldn't it be easy to run away together with the old man? Somewhere deep inside I understood that the potential interest of the corporation in Akira Shinji, the former leader of the project, far outweighed their desire to take revenge on two conceited school kids. So for now, it would be better if we got as far away from the epicenter as was possible. Better for everyone. So, where are you off to now? You realize you're better off not knowing, right? Yes, right. He sighed disappointingly and held out his hand to me. Good luck, Iwamura-san. Kyosuke had nodded at Kagome, bidding farewell, and disappeared into an alley. Didn't think of much of Kyosuke until recently, right? What? She asked absent-mindedly. Nothing. Let's go. She'll need to buy the tickets. Thought of Irina on my way there. She said we'd better keep in touch, but I had no way to get in contact with her quickly, and I couldn't afford to wait. Besides, did I have any reason to trust her? Irina had made it clear the KGB only needed information from me, and information was just something I didn't have. And I had Kagome by my side, which didn't make my mission any easier. In the end, I could only count on myself as usual. We're on the train. Tokyo was left far behind, and the sun disappeared behind the hills to the west. Kagome sat opposite me, looking out the same window. Over the last 10 years, I hadn't left the city often, and I only knew the village where we were heading to because I'd gone there a couple of times in the summer when I was a child. BRB. Alrighty. BRB to Mafia, babe. Maybe it wasn't the best choice, and we should have gone for somewhere by the Sea of Japan. Kagome didn't argue when I suggested the village, and I wasn't keen on running deeper into the country just yet. Wouldn't be able to escape Kobayashi Corporation while in Japan anyway. Then to leave the islands, we need a plan, money, and connections. Looking at Kagome, it was hard to say what she was thinking about. Was she worried that we would have to abandon everything and run away? She probably was, as anyone in her shoes would be. To add to that, Kagome had lost everything she had with her restaurant. Even if the corporation wasn't on her tail, her family future was uncertain to say the least. In a way, the situation was easier for me than her. I wasn't particularly attached to what I had. The house was only a series of times-worn walls that, after my parents' death, mostly held painful memories of long-gone days of peace and happiness. If I were to forget about the danger of Kobayashi Corporation, few things had changed in my life as I was ready to admit. After school, I'd have to make ends meet anyway. Whether it was in Tokyo or somewhere else didn't matter much. And now, at least now I wasn't alone. There used to be Himitsu in my life, and for a time Catherine, but sitting next to Kagome felt something completely new. Maybe we weren't too similar, having many interests in common, or topics to discuss, but united by a common purpose, we were closer now than ever. Sorry it turned out like this. I finally broke the silence. What are you apologizing for, Nico-san? I don't know. Just wanted to say something to cheer you up. It feels like you lost more than I did. Did I? She replied pledgibly and went back to observing the country landscape outside the window. You're back. Welcome back. We're on a train, Mafia. Just to let you know. We are on a train. It was indeed unusually peaceful there, far from the noisy city life. It's like we were going on a holiday. If I didn't know you that well, I'd say you aren't concerned about everything that happened at all. Do you know me well, Nico-san? I'd like to think so. Hey, Angel. Welcome to the stream. What's up? How you doing? We are on a train currently right now, Angel Love. I grunted, feeling a bit something. Come on, don't get upset. We did go through a lot together. She didn't exactly sound insincere, but it felt like a praise for a child after their performance at a kindergarten recital. In the end, everyone gets praised no matter how well they played. I just don't understand how you managed to remain so calm. If I started worrying, will it help? Just recently I had wanted to pity Kagome, but it was thanks to her that we were running away from Tokyo to God knows where. Whatever the case, living on your own in the capital was much more comfortable than hiding out in some backwater province. However, I couldn't help but admit that she at least was consistent. While I was shifting around, at one moment I wanted to praise and support her, but at the next I wanted to shout and lambast her. You're in school. Good luck at school, Angel Love. Give 'em hell, alright? Or just be a good student. That's important as well. I just couldn't understand what feelings I had for the girl. And the lack of understanding angered or rather scared me. Don't blame yourself, Nico-san. It's not your fault at all. Kagome suddenly smiled. What's my fault? Nothing. Just like you only expect me to chastise you. Well, yes, the thought did cross my mind. I smiled in response. What would I chastise you for? What for? Let's say for the fact that I only have reached for my wallet to count my money. But I stopped myself, having realized it was pointless. It's not like it would suddenly multiply. What, Nico-san? Are you not used to counting your coins? She seemed to have read my mind. There it is. Kagome made a complicated face, as if she'd been caught red-handed, but didn't really want to admit it. It's not even what I'm talking about. Money isn't the most important thing here. The only people who think money is important live in luxury. Kagome said preachingly and stared out the window again. So you think I lived in luxury? The sarcasm in my voice echoed through the carriage. Fine, whatever you say. Indeed, the little money we had probably wouldn't last us very long. In order to leave the country, we needed fake passports or at least enough money to pay some Chinese fishermen. Sounded difficult enough, even in theory, even if I had pockets full of cash. Kagome sighed, and I saw something akin to sympathy in her eyes. Nico-san, like you said, it doesn't make sense to point fingers now. I too would like to save my father and not leave my grandfather behind. Besides, I'm worried about leaving him alone with Kyosuke-san. But right now we need to take care of ourselves first. I wanted to believe her, but the future seemed far too nebulous. It is difficult to jump down a bridge into a muddy river, hoping it's deep enough. Meanwhile, Kagome and I had been tossed into a whirlpool head first. God, I wished I'd accepted Ellie's offer. I could have been playing bass in Z Feel Z and lived on Easy Street. Oh well, no Easy Street for us. Imagine a work. Alright. This is gonna be like read on your own stuff. Kagome got a job. Place is nice. Wasn't much of a cook. Hard menial labor. Coal mine. Nobody asked for a CV. If you can swing a pickaxe, you're welcome. I'm a coal miner? Man! A single room for two. Little embarrassed. Girl my age in a 6 tatami place. She earned less than me. You have to watch a video. Alrighty, Mafia. Good luck. Split division of responsibilities. Yeah, this is a lot of dialogue. I failed to read this in the last game too, and I think I got yelled at for it in the comments of one of my Everlasting Summer videos. But you try reading all this. Kagome became beloved by the old local ladies. Cool. Confirmed their expectations. We were a couple. We're dating! Yay! She was resilient. Yay! Define my feelings. War and love don't go well together. No chance to do an offensive. Desire to die. Oh, don't do that again. No, I want to live. The villagers accepted. Ah. What a lovely couple. We are the loveliest couple ever. Time passed, and we grew old and whatever. Grandfather was safe. That's good. Run away from Tokyo. I don't know. Going back might have been a bad day. Might have been a bad idea. I don't know. October came to its end. The morning fog was here. Oh, Kagome was asleep. It's been a month, and then there'd be a year. Are we gonna live here forever? Today the monotony of the daily grind was broken by an uncommon event. An accident happened in the mine. One of the miners had his leg run over by a trolley. Ow. So we were let home earlier. And then an inevitable rise to profession. If he ended up disabled and couldn't work, what would happen to his family? What would happen to me if I were in his place? Would Kagome take care of me? On the way home, I brought some groceries and entered the hotel with my head full of heavy contemplation. Kagome stood in the hall, looking thoughtfully at the phone. Hi, Nico-san? She flinched and looked at me like she had done something wrong and expected punishment for it. Why are you here so early today? Now let us go early. Just like that for no reason. For some reason I didn't want to tell her about what had happened, but there was also no point in hiding the truth. Mato-san forgot to pull the trolley on handbrake and got his leg run over. Was it bad? She asked carefully. I don't know. Definitely got a fracture. Maybe more than one. Your calculator's broken? Oh no. Tell a teacher. My calculator's broken. Give me a new one. Now. Maybe don't say that, but I would tell the teacher. You have a dangerous job, Nico-san. Yeah, well. Still, what was she doing here? And you, were you going to call somebody? Me? No, and who could I call? Aren't you worried about your grandfather? Of course I am, but we'd agreed we'd only call Tokyo together. Had we? I couldn't recall anything like that. All right, fine. I decided to not argue with her. Here, I brought some food. Took the groceries from me and went to the kitchen to cook dinner. The evening crawled in quietly. If you looked at it from the outside, you could probably get the impression that she was perfectly fine with our situation. After Kiyosuke had let us know that her grandfather was okay, Kagome no longer talked about him, the corporation, or our plans for the future. This is your personal one? Really? Can you borrow one from the classroom? Blackmail. Every person deals with difficulties in their own way. But it wasn't her attitude, akin to fatalism or even apathy. Definitely wasn't planning to work with a pickaxe until my hair turned gray, quietly waiting for an unfixed trolley to run over my leg. In Tokyo, Kagome had said she wasn't going to work her whole life at that restaurant. She had given up and accepted her fate so easily, not to mention Todai. I'm back! Kagome skillfully carried 2 plates and a bag. Maybe he wanted something more than noodles with vegetables, but it was all we had. Mato-san! She began to look with a look on her face like she had been dragged to the funeral of a 3rd cousin of her grandmother who she'd never seen in her life. Mato-san would have been touched by her empathy. Is he going to be okay? I'm not a doctor, but it looked pretty bad. It looked pretty crappy. There was seemingly no point in going easy with Kagome. She didn't look particularly shocked. Nico-san, please be careful, she said without much of an expression, but her words surprised me. As if I have a choice. You can use your phone. Ah, there you go. At least you put on some muscles. She suddenly smiled. Just a psych process, nothing to do with me. This is nice. Look, we're happy. We're holding chopsticks. This is happy. See? If you say so. Look, I've been thinking. I finally found the courage just to start. We've been in this village for a while. Isn't it time to decide what we're going to do next? What do you mean? We can't live our whole lives like this. Yes, I suppose. She responded briefly, as if she wasn't interested in the conversation at all. I'm not forcing anything, but don't forget who's at fault for us being here. Didn't want us to start pointing fingers at each other again, but Kagome's lack of emotional response was getting on my nerves. Who then? Alright, that's not what I meant. Just time is passing by and we... Kagome interrupted me. You want to go back to Tokyo? It doesn't matter what I want, or whether I want it or not. It's impossible. But what do you want to? And you don't? Me? She said it in such a bland tone that I couldn't hold back myself anymore. Make it sound like we're stuck here because I want us to be. You're used to working at the restaurant, but what if I never lifted anything heavier than a beer bottle before? Do you think that I want to become the next cripple after Mato-san? Are you going to take care of me? And even if you are, will you have the time, energy, and money? She wasn't reacting to all of my attacks, but I suddenly felt ashamed. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Just that we're in the same boat, but sometimes it feels like I'm the only one rowing. Not even sometimes, often. Maybe I'm rowing in the opposite direction. Kagome smirked, stood up, and began to collect the dishes. Thanks for the food, Iwamura-san. The sarcasm in my voice was almost enough to make the plates ring. Like that. While Kagome was washing dishes in the shared kitchen, I didn't know what to busy myself with. It was still early. The sun had just gone down. Usually at this time we would only just go up to the surface to wash ourselves and change our clothes after a long day at work. That would take another good hour. It isn't as easy to clean off all the dirt from under the ground. Going back to the village on the company's bus was another half an hour. And when I would come back, rush hour at Kagome's place would only just be starting. Luckily enough, unlike in Tokyo, no establishment had stayed open late into the night. People were used to getting up and going to bed early. Kagome would come back home when I was starting to fall asleep, quickly made dinner for us. Then we would go to sleep. Didn't have too much time to talk on weekdays, and she'd often end up working on weekends too, as those hours paid the most. We'd lived in this village for a month already, but how much time had we really spent together? It's probably only logical to call such a relationship forced. Kagome was sitting at the window and looked out at the street. A few villagers still out this late were hurrying home. I was idly flipping through the pages of some manga I bought at the local store. There was no hope to find anything better in this backwater. Sometimes I took away from the pages and shifted my gaze toward Kagome. Was she bored? For now I was managing to persuade myself that it was better to live like this than not live at all. But sometimes I felt like I was about to go crazy from the depression and monotony. Kagome, on the other hand, could spend hours just watching the people that idly walked past the hotel. Maybe it was because she'd already had to go through a complete change in her life once. She adapted to her new circumstances easier than me. Are we going to just sit in silence? What's there to talk about, Nico-san? She parried the blah 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 without even turning her head. After today's accident with Mato-san, I'm starting to wonder who's next. Sort of accident is common in mines, and I'm not exactly a brilliant miner. Then maybe you should find something else. She finally looked at me and smiled. Like what? We could use someone who can wash dishes. Sometimes there are so many guests that we just can't handle them all. Even if I agreed to the job, how much would it pay? Less than a mine. Exactly my point. Would it be enough to make ends meet? We once calculated that if I were paid as much as Kagome, it'd be enough for rent, but we need to start saving on food. So neither of us would be able to survive on their own. In a way, Kagome had an easier relationship with money than I did. She was used to cutting costs, and I didn't see it as much of a problem. In contrast, the thought of eating only plain rice terrified me. Are you unhappy with your life? Are you happy with it? I smirked powerlessly. If we can't change anything, what's the point of complaining? Can't change anything, I grumbled. We shouldn't have let things come to this in the first place. Nico-san, is there something upsetting you again? I didn't want to start looking for someone to blame yet again. After all, we were going to live together for quite a while longer. What was the point in scarring our relationship? Live together for quite a while. These words were painted on our future a bit too intimately. Everything's great. I snapped and got back to my manga. But following the stupid and naive plot bored me pretty quickly. Maybe it was time to ditch shonen for seinen? Okay. Maybe we should go somewhere. For example, well, I don't know. Really, the only noteworthy place of high culture in this village was the place Kagome worked at. Besides, it's late. Yeah, it is. You know, I think that despite Mato-san's misfortune, we'd finally get a chance to be together. What are you implying? Nothing. I immediately felt the blood rushing to my cheeks and lowered my head. So are you asking me out, Nico-san? I could hear playful notes in her voice. How long ago had I fallen in love with this girl? How long ago had I realized that Kagome had become something more to me than just a partner in crime? The thought burned my body like a shot of boiling water and removed my ability to think clearly. Was there a reason for my feelings, a starting point? Right now it didn't matter. Even if so, I said quietly, I understood that you didn't plan to get stuck in this godforsaken village together with me. I understand that you'd prefer it was the red-haired friend of yours next to you, that American girl or Kobayashi. But it is what it is. She seemed to be apologizing, but in a voice that made it sound more like she was scolding me. Why would you think that? Isn't it true? I never said that. People said everything that they think. Maybe we'd all have a better life then. So if there's something you're not telling me, Nico-san, what? Are you embarrassed again? I desperately wanted to cool down. I'll step out. I need to go to the toilet. Alright, if I don't check something, guys, I'm gonna go crazy. Give me a second. Look at the lovely sights here. Give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. Just give me a split second, okay? Okay. All appears to be maybe good. Yes, all appears to be maybe good. Okay, cool. The owner of the hotel, an old lady, was sleeping behind the reception desk. I had taken a liking to her at first sight, and as it turned out later, not without reason. Not only was she kind and polite, but she didn't ask unnecessary questions, though she was adamant about providing a discount for renting the room long term. The fact that I'd somehow managed to fall in love with Kagome seemed weird and wild, like I'd lost my mind without even noticing. How do you even tell if you've lost your mind? Although there were plenty of hints, of course, like, take for example, my irrational desire to protect her even against my own interest. But then, what was I to do? How could I look her in the eyes after having realized my feelings? Suddenly, the desire to go back to Tokyo and having my old life appeared so pointless. We were together, the location didn't matter to me, whether it was the capital of Japan or a backwater village. But what I was only one who felt an instant change in my outlook on life. For Kagome, nothing had changed. Did she love me? What did she even think about Nikolai Anokin behind her solemn and detached mask? I didn't want to go back to the room, but it didn't seem like a good idea to keep standing in the hall for no reason either. Suddenly, I started to believe that Kagome would suspect that I was doing something wrong if I stayed here long. She was still sitting at the window and looking out at the street. Are you back? Kagome asked me without looking. Yeah. I responded briefly, sat behind the table, and grabbed that boring manga. We kept sitting like that, in almost complete silence, only rarely exchanging a few words until late into the night. Good night. This time I dragged my futon further away than usual from hers, to the other end of the room. "Good night, Nico-chan." It seemed that just the day before everything had been fine and in perfect order, and I hadn't been worried about us sleeping in the same room. But now my back was going numb every 2 minutes, and I had to toss and turn a lot. I desperately wanted to fall asleep, wake up tomorrow with a fresh head, and try to figure out what was I supposed to do next. But sleep refused to come. Kagome lay quietly. Tried to listen carefully, but couldn't even hear her breath. Knew love should bring with it happiness, but so far the only thing I felt was a growing acidic anxiety. What would tomorrow bring? It would bring a party. And dancing and lap dance. Forget it. Damn it. Waking up with an alarm. Office under the devil's machine. Wake up this early. Do so much. It was love. Classical. Workplace. Finances. More important. Miracle. Strangely enough, anxiety. Kagome. Warmed to me by the time we spent together. Pillows of misfortune. New chapter in my life. The CAT scan revealed wasn't a fracture. We were relieved. They stick together. No one is immune to accidents. The job I'd really dreamed of a month ago. Big idea. Healthy person. Lacking knowledge and persistence. Keeping things rolling. Yakuza. Celebrities and stars. Japan. So we found ourselves in a position. Our boss gave us a little bonus today, so the guys immediately left to celebrate it, inviting me along. But I turned the invitation down, leaving none of them happy. Whatever. Wanted to spend the extra money to buy a gift for Kagome. I was walking up and down the main, and in fact only street of the village, all the way from the grocery store to the hardware store, and passed by the clothes store. What could I buy for her? Absolutely no idea what Kagome liked or what she was into. In her free time, she preferred to look out the window or silently think about something. Typical female gifts. Flowers, fragrances, jewelry. Didn't quite match her image in my mind. I could have bought Himitsu a cheap necklace out of the window or of the shop owned by the kind old lady Kono-san. Himitsu! The memory of her brought sadness. Himitsu and Kagome were so different. At the same time, she and Catherine probably had something in common. A globe? Next to the necklace stood a small snow globe. Maybe that was it. Kagome would probably have been happy to appear in the place whose miniature copy was trapped inside that glass ball, to appear in Paris. Kono-san noticed that I was examining her wares and walked out into the front of her store. Turned out that the next few days they were going to have an autumn festival dedicated to some local spirit that apparently used to guard a mountain outside the village. Many Japanese still took their traditional of honoring spirits very seriously, though spirits usually connected to particular places. It's a pretty snow globe. Yeah. You like snow globes, Angel? They're pretty cool. And the festival itself was a good event to go to. As a child, I've gone a couple of times with Himitsu. Himitsu again. Wasn't particularly sorry about leaving my old house, school, friends, or even Tokyo behind. But parting with Himitsu caused a dull pain in my heart every time I thought about it. Although in reality we had parted long before that. Maybe even the day when Catherine returned and I started my search for Akira Shinji. Everything that happened after that could be seen just as the spasming of a dying friendship that never became something more. Kono-san was definitely good at her trade, making a passing remark about how my girlfriend would need a yukata. I know what a yukata is. Kimono. But the prices, they're cool. They are. But the prices of traditional Japanese clothing she sold were a complete mismatch with her miner's wage. Kono-san quickly estimated Kagome's size and offered me a few color variations. Yukatas look great, but burning an entire half of my paycheck for a little fun one time. Only yesterday that argument might have been convincing, but now I was in a new reality where love held my purse strings. Besides, I'd never known how to spend money wisely, let alone save it. A snow globe in a bag, a yukata carefully wrapped in thick paper. The bright sun shining its rays on the village. This was the best day in a very, very long time. Suddenly realized I was smiling, or rather, grinning idiotically, but it didn't bother me at all. Let them look. I was in love, and it had nothing to be ashamed of. A few women holding basins with clothes did actually cast surprised looks at me, but I couldn't care less. Noticing that, they left quietly, covering their mouths with their hands, and quickly entered a bathhouse. Every person had the right to be happy, don't they? Why did I have to be bothered with other people? The only variable that was preventing me from solving this equation was Kagome. I was so full of happiness that I forgot that the only happy love is one returned in kind. I guess that's how it had been with Katya too. A simulacrum of her mind and completely replaced with the real Catherine. But now things were way more complicated and I had no idea what the real Kagome was like. I dug deeper. Was I even in love with the right person? As for Catherine, that damn circulation was close enough to a real person. Oh, just get on with it already. Get to the next scene. Yap, 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 yap. Shut up. Sooner the better. Kagome lay on the floor reading a book. Marukami and some forest. I only managed to catch a glimpse of the title on the cover. Are you reading? She only tilted her head in response. Is it interesting? I got another simple nod. Where did you get it? This place hasn't seen literature since it's been built, apart from manga. I borrowed it from Kono-san. Kagome replied briefly. Kono-san, huh? I said it like a prosecutor combing over a witness's statement. I have something for you. Here. Without any second thoughts, I took the snow globe out of the bag and handed it to her. Kagome didn't seem to understand what I wanted from her at first, opened her mouth slightly and looked at me in surprise. Then she grew embarrassed, took the snow globe and turned it upside down. Big flakes of snow fell onto the Eiffel Tower. You shouldn't have, really. Come on, they gave me a bonus at work. I tried to sound confident while hiding the package with the yukata behind my back. You'd better have saved the money. Who knows when we might need it? If you always save for a rainy day, when are you going to enjoy the sunny ones? We'll be saying that when that day comes. Yeah, sure. I didn't want to argue with her. Kagome was right in a way. I was just trying desperately not to accept the new rules I had to play by, which placed us at the very bottom of the pyramid. On the other hand, I now understood Kagome much better, particularly how difficult it was for her to lose everything she'd had after her mother's death. Saving every yen, saying no, even to the most essential items, poverty holds you in a vice grip, slowly exhausting you, sucking all life from you. Then slowly, silently, every desire to strive for something more, move forward and evolve, disappears. You can only think about survival. Poverty doesn't put you in the mind to buy a yukata or enjoy a festival. Ah, right! I examined awkwardly, backing away to the door. The landlady asked me to help. I'll be back in a moment. Kagome just shrugged. Kono-san was definitely good at her trade, and she wasn't too happy when I went back to return the yukata and asked for a refund. Tried to explain that I behave impulsively, and our budget couldn't withstand expenses like that, but she parried sharply. Business wasn't going well, and she had taxes to pay. Her grandson was going to a university in Tokyo, and her son-in-law was about to lose his job. Next I'd probably hear about lunar phases, Chinese calendar, and predictions of a wise woman. I sighed, apologized again, and walked out of the shop. But I still couldn't show the yukata to Kagome. Thankfully, the landlady agreed to keep it for some time. Disappointed, I returned to our room. It was quick. Kagome lay in the same pose, reading her Murakami book. Didn't take long. I grunted and fell to the floor. Did something happen? She finally closed the book and gave me a serious look. I'm just tired from work. How's Mato-san? All right. Turns out his fracture isn't that serious, so he'll walk again. I'm glad to hear that. She smiled, and I immediately grew embarrassed. No, Kagome's smile wasn't something unusual, although she didn't smile often. But now that I'd realized how important this girl was to me, it was as if I had to get to know her anew. Every gesture, every look, every slight movement of her lips or her little sighs. You must be hungry? She stood up like a bird flying off a windowsill, noticing a human close by. Yes, it'd be nice to eat something. She walked out of the room, leaving me with my new feelings. Everything was delicious as usual. Having completely emptied the bowls, I carefully put away the chopsticks and looked at Kagome. What? Thank you. For what? She got a bit embarrassed. For the food. It was delicious. All right, you're welcome. She froze for a moment, like a lion about to pounce, and took a cassette from under the table. Here, it's for you. We got a bonus too. A new album from one of my favorite bands. Wow! I was genuinely excited. I saw their poster on a wall while I was living at your house. Besides, it was very cheap. Probably cheaper than that trinket of yours. I was a little offended that she'd call a snow globe a trinket, but I was so too happy about Kagome's gift to say anything. Wasn't even about the cassette itself. The only player I could use to listen to it didn't exactly have the great sound quality. Didn't want to assume anything. The gifts might have just been out of formality. Thank you. I'm really glad. Honest. Come on, what's so special about it? Acting like it's a briefcase full of cash and not a cassette. Now, Angel, do you know what a cassette tape is? This is a old, before your time, question. She was blushing more and more. You know what people say, it's the thought that counts. You can stare at water all you want, but to learn how to swim you need to dive into it. you think? It's what we listened to back in the day before, like, music CDs and stuff. What do you mean? Nico-san, if you hadn't helped me and my grandfather, we wouldn't have to stay here. Was she really going to start blaming me again? Maybe we wouldn't even be alive. Come on, don't say that. Although she probably wasn't exaggerating, things really could have gone poorly for them. Probably did have my reasons to blame her for what had happened, but now I couldn't even think about that. I was thankful that we'd ever met in the first place, even though I had to sacrifice almost everything I had for it. In any case, I'm glad that. Was I really ready to confess to her? Not that I'm glad, I mean, despite some minor inconceivabilities, Kagome laughed sincerely. Nico-san, you're either very patient or very silly. Or very much in love. You do? Awesome. People of this day and age still know. Yay. I lowered my head and pretended I was carefully studying the empty bowl. Not everyone would do that for someone they barely know. What do you mean by that? I don't know. I just wondered what I would have done if we switched places. So? Kagome smiled mysteriously. It's a simple question that requires a very complicated answer. I didn't even know if I wanted to hear that answer. It's alright, I understand. You don't need to say anything. After all, I didn't help you for your thanks, and not for your own advantage. She suddenly leaned forward, getting very close to my face. And what sort of advantage could I get out of it? I felt my neck start to sweat. That disgusting feeling, huge droplets of sweat running down my neck, made me even more nervous. I think you know exactly what I'd mean. The snow globe is one thing, but a yukata. Yukata? You thought you could trick me? How would I trick you if I already bought it? There was no point asking how she knew about the yukata. What difference did it make? And why are you hiding it? Just heard about the festival from Kono-san and decided it would be good to go without the proper clothing. You could have asked me first if I wanted to go. Kagome frowned and pulled away. Right, I know, we don't have much money, and I can't burn it like that. Nico-san. She stopped me confidently. Still haven't asked me whether I want to go. Do you? I said timidly. Hadn't even thought about it this morning, but since you're putting me on the spot, you can always refuse. Can we return the yukata and get the money back? Well, I drawled and looked around as if trying to find something in the tiny hotel room. Knowing Kono-san, I very much doubt it. Kagome smiled, still giving an intense look. Listen, I could go back, get on my knees and beg for a refund. Don't. What? I said don't. I said bring the yukata here. I want to try it on. I hesitated, not knowing what to do next. Was she mocking me, or did she really like the festival idea? I could hardly believe the latter, but decided not to argue and went down for the yukata. The landlady smiled cunningly as she handed me the package, and I think I considered her a good person. She must have been the one to tell Kagome. Whoa! Yukata is now on. The yukata fit Kagome so well it seemed like it was made for her. It suits you. Let's see. She was happy as a child. I might have expected such a reaction from Himitsu, but not from the ever-serious Iwamura. We walked out of the hall with its big mirror, and Kagome started spinning around in front of it, looking at herself from different angles. The landlady complimented both the yukata and Kagome. If I forgot how much I'd spend on the thing, everything seemed to be going a little too smoothly. I could think of something to worry about even when nothing was going on, and now I had a good reason. When we returned to the room, Kagome squinted and slyly and said, Nico-san, you look like you're waiting for a punishment, but we really can't afford this sort of thing. What's the point of talking about it now, since we can't return the yukata? Well, I'm glad you think so. Where was the catch? But She looked at me intensely like a strict teacher, waiting for an explanation from the mischievous pupil. I really don't know why I did that, why I bought something so expensive. You know, our life isn't exactly a paradise, and I saw an opportunity to distract ourselves a little. When we are going to have a day off at the same time again, you don't have to come up with excuses, Nico-san. Kagome frowned and crossed her arms over her chest defensively. If it's only about the money, what else would it be about? I asked, surprised. Nothing. She scuffed and turned away. You see, you're mad about something again. I'm mad about how stupid, short-sighted, and insensitive you are. I've been called the first two before, but insensitive? Well, Iwamura-san, you're hard to please. You started well, too. She was getting angrier and angrier. Started what? Now I was getting annoyed with her baseless attacks. Scolding me for spending so much money and was one thing. I may have deserved it. But when you don't understand what the other person is mad at you for, the person you love, you want to tell me something. Don't you want to tell me anything, Nico-san? What was she trying to say? As if out of thick fog, an unexpected hunch began to take shape in my mind. To be honest, I wasn't going to do it so soon. If it were any other girl, we'd just been thrust together by fate. If we're fellows in misery, and relationships like that really last longer and well. I was talking absolute drivel and shifting my gaze all around the room, severely trying to look at anything but Kagome. It was pleasant to think that she was waiting for me to declare my love for her, except I was completely unprepared for it. Guess it took me a very long to realize my feelings for you, and everything happened so quickly. Miko-san! Her voice was ice cold. So what do you want to tell me? Want to say? Judging by your reaction, it seemed like my love confession would be followed by my head becoming the target for every object in the room light enough for Kagome to pick up. Why was it so difficult with her? I summoned all my courage and blurted out, I love you, Iwamura Kagome! She didn't want to hear a long speech. I'd keep it short. Kagome's eyes opened wider and wider, and I prepared to defend myself against dishes, chairs, or something more dangerous. Took you a while. Suddenly, her face quivered and tears swelled in her eyes. What? I was waiting so long, almost gave up hope. So you, too? I was probably ready for any reaction, but not reciprocity. It wasn't even that I wasn't confident of myself as a man or didn't understand her as a woman. It was Kagome. As if it were any other girl in her place, I would have understood my feelings much earlier. Nico-san, you're asking a Japanese girl to confess her love for you. I don't know how it is in your country, but we have certain rules. Her words sounded like just as silly as mine. I'm asking for anything. I'm just glad that you too. Sorry, I was really nervous. Really felt like I was on tenterhooks. Here you go apologizing again. Kagome laughed and looked unbelievably beautiful to me with tears in her eyes and her cheeks red. Hey, Mafia babe. Welcome back. Look at Kagome. Look at, her new yukata. It was hard for me to keep looking at her and stick to the rules she talked about, so I lowered my head and stared at the empty bowl on the table. What are we supposed to do next? What do you mean? It was hard enough to start living in a room with a young man, and now... Of course, I'd also thought about it more than once, but when Kagome put it that way, the problem started to seem more serious to me. I'll behave like a gentleman, you have nothing to fear. Except, she said quietly, lowering her eyes, I don't know if I can behave like a lady. Everything happened by itself, and Kagome found herself in my arms. Hey, Shion. The missile is Ippy. The missile? What do you mean, the missile? What's the missile? And how you doing today, Shion? It's good to see you today. How's life treating ya? We're still slowly getting through this game as much as we possibly can. We'll beat it someday, I know we will. One of these days. Yeah, sorry, this part here is just way too long. I woke up pretty early, tried to move to him, and immediately realized that my left arm and shoulder were completely numb. Kagome was sleeping pressed to me, hold me in a vice grip. I carefully freed myself from her embrace, got up and stretched my arms. I have class. Bye, Angel. I'll see you soon. Have an awesome day, alright? See you, hopefully tonight or later today. What did last night mean to us? Absolutely needed to go outside and get some fresh air. The freezing cold morning greeted me with fog and a pleasant chill. I didn't know how winter was here in the mountains, but I bet it'd be colder than in Tokyo. You kinda wouldn't exactly be considered warm clothing. Something would definitely need. I walked down an almost deserted street wondering where I could find the money. Oh, I watched the Pokemon too. Aside from, like, all of the other stuff, I'm very excited for the game at the end. I'm very, very excited about Pokemon Legends ZA, it's called. Z to A, or whatever it's called. I'm glad. I'm ready for it. I hope you are too. But let's give him time to work on it. I'm glad it's being released next year. Give it time. Let him cook a bit with that game. Almost deserted. Himitsu was walking toward me wearing a beautiful yukata. Of course, somewhere in the depths of my memory, I knew Himitsu's grandmother lived not too far from this village, but I was still surprised to see her here. On the other hand, it was probably why this place had come to mind as somewhere to escape to. Anyway, what options did I have right now? Turn around and leave? Hide? Obviously, after everything that had happened, there was zero reason Himitsu had to know where I was. I didn't know what kind of rumors were circulating around about us in school. I would have liked to trust Himitsu, but at this point it would be both foolish and dangerous. But I just froze, unable to take even a single step. The first option for most mammals in a dangerous situation is in the face of a serious threat is to freeze and hide. I tried to force myself to run. Himitsu noticed me. Nico-kun? And I finally managed to turn around and start walking away. Nico-kun, it's you, right? I know, Mega Evolutions. Hope we get new Megas. Oh, we might. We could. We'll have to see, huh? Maybe new forms of, the Gen 6 Pokemon. Yeah, it's gonna be a long time till we know. I can't wait, though. It was too late. Hey, there you go, Mafia babe. It's Himitsu in her own yukata. I stopped and waited for her to come closer. Nico-kun, what are you doing here? Himitsu looked surprised, but not particularly shocked. And you? I asked for a stupid question just to say something. I'm buying food for breakfast. Perhaps I should have been more careful and paid more attention to my surroundings. But I hadn't thought Himitsu would be visiting her grandmother at the end of October. I see. How are you? Nico-kun? She frowned. I've been so worried, and now you're just joking around. They told us at school that you and Iwamura-senpai kidnapped Kobayashi-senpai, and then you just disappeared. What was I supposed to think? That you ran away or were arrested? I spent so many nights crying, not knowing whether you were dead or alive, and here you are, fine, healthy, and smiling like nothing happened. The thing is, so many things have happened, and I don't even know where to start. What about Iwamura-senpai? Is it true? Did you two kidnap Kobayashi-senpai together? Wait a minute, just don't start throwing accusations at me. The situation really was so complicated, I didn't even want to start explaining it. Mega Honchkrow? Who knows? Mega Honchkrow would be cool. Maybe Mega Gen 6 Pokemon. She was about to frown, but then pursed her lips as if she were going to cry. Nico-kun, if you really did it, my dad can help you. No need. I quickly waved my hands. Definitely no need for that. Don't say a word to your father about this, got it? But why? Because it's my business. Once everything settles down, I'll return to Tokyo. I lied. I doubted the corporation would ever leave us alone. Suspicious people came to your house several times trying to see something in your windows. Do you know how worried I was? Sorry. Why should I care about your apologies? My nerves aren't going to regrow themselves, you know. I'm not having it easily either, you know. I understand that you have been worried, but I was the one who had to leave everything behind and run away, not you. Her worry was as often was the case, felt inappropriate, pointless, and excessive. Your father won't be able to help. He'd only make the situation worse. Who would believe us? Me if I say I'm not guilty? Besides, it wasn't true. I'd become an accomplice of Kagome's just by silently watching her hold Ellie hostage. And I couldn't just abandon the girl, even if formally I was less guilty than her. So Iwamura-senpai is with you? She wrung her hands pitifully. No, not at all. Last time I saw her was in Tokyo. Nico-kun, I can tell you're lying. Why would I lie about that? You and Iwamura-senpai, so there's something between you two? God, this is what she was really worried about. Whoops. Himitsu, there's a lot you don't understand, and I can't explain it at all. Both because I actually just can't, and because things are very complicated. Sorry, I'm gonna check something one more time. Give me a second, guys. Don't mind me. Don't mind me, okay? Wow. Wow. Okay. They're complicated. Just don't jump to conclusions. Everything is going to be alright with me. I've settled down just fine and I'm not planning on dying yet. Nico-kun! She drawled pleadingly and shifted her grip on her grocery bag. And you? Are you going to be here long? Today's the festival. The festival? Asked a bit too loudly. I didn't even know. Are you going? Is that why you came? I knew perfectly well that my surprise looked extremely unnatural, but couldn't do nothing about it. Nico-kun, I'd really like you to tell me the whole truth. I couldn't think of a persuasive enough lie, so I ended up just keeping my mouth shut. Michi looked at me right in the eyes and finally sighed, and the tension in her face ceased somewhat. My grandmother is ill, so I'm not going to the festival today. Really? I sighed with relief. Nothing serious, I hope. I hope so, too. You weren't planning on leaving here anytime soon, are you? No. No, I drawled, and I'll see you again before I go. Hope you'll find the courage to tell me what happened by then. Goodbye. I stood at the attention watching her go until Himitsu turned in a corner. Kagome was already awake and had made breakfast. Where did you go so early in the morning? Just wanted some fresh air. I reached over to give her a kiss, but Kagome pulled away lightly. You weren't this shy last night. I sniffed, but she didn't seem to be in the flirting mood. Alright, sorry. Nico-kun, stop apologizing. Kagome shoved my side hard enough to make me fall to the floor. Didn't want to tell her that I'd bumped into Himitsu, but we had a good chance of meeting her at the festival. Even though Himitsu had said she wouldn't be going. And when would she be returning to Tokyo? If her grandmother got worse, Himitsu would probably stay in the village longer. I had no reason to suspect Himitsu would tell her father or anyone else about me, at least on purpose. But would it also be naive to hope she wouldn't let it slip? Nico-san, is there something upsetting you? I was sitting holding my chopsticks over the rice bowl, like an executioner making a terrible pause with his axe above the criminal's neck. No, just thinking. About what? About what? I couldn't get Himitsu out of my head, so I blurted out the first thing that came to it. We're like a married couple now. Married? Kagome exclaimed and turned red. If you think that I'll let you get to me with whenever you want. I was about to say that I wasn't thinking of anything like that, but stopped at the very last moment. After all, why would I say that if I in fact did think exactly that? I was a healthy 18-year-old, and of course I did. Maybe even more than once a day. Well, if that you try to get to me, I'll do the same. We have a deal. Great. An awkward silence descended upon our room, only broken by the sounds of the village waking up outside. So it's a festival today? I finally asked. Yes. Kagome replied thoughtfully, but then flinched as she suddenly realized something. Don't you dare spend money there. Once you caught it is enough for us to have to save money until the end of the month. Christ, want me to give you all the money and just keep some for pocket change? That's a good idea. Except, why would you need pocket change? Well, for example, to buy yukatas occasionally. I sighed and finally pierced the rice with my chopsticks. Nico-san, I'm not joking. Nothing has changed because of what happened yesterday. Nothing has changed, huh? Well, I didn't mean... She grew embarrassed first, then angry. Was talking about money. We aren't any richer just because we spent the night together. Obviously. I drawled. If this stuff earned you money, I'd have to be a millionaire by the end of my relationship with Catherine. So you have to take things seriously. Although if Himitsu spilled the beans, we might never need money again. Would we have to escape again? Maybe life in the village wasn't perfect, but would we be better off anywhere else? To a degree, I was used to it by now, even as to the manual labor in the mine. I'm more than serious about this. Yeah, I can't tell. Kagome kept scolding me, but I couldn't get rid of the anxiety from my meeting with Himitsu. With the yukata bought, we couldn't just not go to the damn festival. How would I explain all that to Kagome? Welcome in a different world today, so I'm still trying to figure out how to live in it. I really want to, and I'd always wanted to take care of you, and provide a decent life for both of us. But that's impossible now. We aren't living, we're surviving. My fear, caused by something completely different, was making me say things I didn't really believe. Yes, our life wasn't that easy, but I wouldn't say we were just surviving. There were so many good things, too. So that's what you think. Kagome turned her head away and stared at the wall, as if searching for any imperfections. Not saying I dislike living with you, just you also said that our finances leave a lot to be desired. No matter what I said, it sounded sure. You see? Stop. Kagome suddenly interrupted me with resolve. Why do you never call me by my name? Well, I did have certain problems with that. I usually call Himitsu Sunshine and Catherine was Kaya to me, but just couldn't force myself to call some people by their names. It seemed almost physically and felt unnatural. for calling my mother by her first name, Kagome-san? Forced the words out, but Kagome only frowned harder. Kagome-chan? Tried to contain it, but started giggling. Alright, fine, just Kagome, I said, trying to sound as confident as possible. I was starting to think that you slept with me because you had nothing better to do. What? I exclaimed and even stood up, shocked by your words. For your information, I can be a fox sometimes, but I'm not a con artist. I love you for quite some time. I only just realized it recently. Love me? Just quietly staring at the wall. Haven't you realized yet? Yes, but love. It's a big word. What else am I supposed to say? What does it matter what words I use? My feelings, that's what's important. Feelings. Kagome was slouching over, trying to occupy little space as possible. Yes, and I don't feel ashamed to tell the whole world about it. Walked out to the balcony, opened the window, and shouted, Nikolai Anoken loves Kagome Iwamura! Nico-san! She ran over to me, grabbed me by the hand, and tried to pull me away from the window, but I didn't let her. Do you believe me now? I will when you close the window and calm down. I lingered for about 10 more seconds and finally closed the window. What am I supposed to do with you? Kagome sighed when I walked back to the table. You can love me just like I love you. Yes, I can do that. Suddenly said in a languid voice and slowly with cat-like grace crawled up to me. I told you I won't let you seduce me next time. You did. You did. You didn't. You did. Alright, let me check one more thing real quick. Okay, let's go. We had to go to the festival. Sexto was of course distracted from everything else, so I had totally forgotten about Imitsu. When we walked down the street hand in hand, many of the people we knew were just strangers looking at us in surprise, even giggled sometimes. Kagome only smiled shyly and turned her gaze away. You're braver than usual. Do you think I should be ashamed of something? No, it's just you're usually not so. I paused to find an appropriate word. What? Not so daring, I said and smirked. I thought you liked daring girls. Take Kobayashi's... come on. What does she have to do with this? Move already. Kagome softly grabbed my side with an elbow. Festival! All traditional Japanese festivals look alike. Whether they're dedicated to the decrease a local minor deity or the fertility of soil, there are always plenty of stalls with food and entertainment. Who's this guy here? You can catch goldfish, shoot targets with a pneumatic rifle, and of course eat candy apples. Ah! I immediately brought one for Kagome. We aren't here to eat. Really? I asked. I naively thought that it was the main point of these festivals. Maybe for other people, but our family budget still hasn't recovered from your yukata. The yukata's on you, so it's at very least not mine. And stop already. You said yourself that everything's fine. We're going to see how fine it is by the end of the month when we have nothing to eat. I couldn't tell whether she was being serious or trying to make fun of me. Alright, you know what? I'll get a second job. Maybe you can upload trains at night. But Nico-san, there are no cargo trains stopping here. Kagome said like a teacher correcting the mistake of an honest student. Well then, I don't know. There's a will, there's a way. Maybe you should stop drinking with your colleagues on Fridays. Cute, I know. Look at them, like it's me for decide. Drinking after work was part of a good work ethic in Japan. You could turn down the invitation once or twice, but if you ignored it all the time, you'd be considered strange at best. Although in my defense, I could say that I didn't drink too hard on those evenings, usually being the first one to leave. Besides, we can't just save money our entire lives, right? It's better to earn more than to spend less. Kagome said nothing, focusing on her apple. Local kids ran by us, shouting happily. At first they looked at me with bulging eyes, tall non-Asian men or an oddity there. But with time people got used to me, and my appearance stopped being a surprise to anyone. I suddenly thought that Kagome and I could eventually have children too. What are you dreaming about, Nico-san? Do you like children? Not much. Why? Because they're small, hyperactive, know nothing and obey no one, and they run around and scream all the time. Oh. I drawled, not knowing what to say. Why are you asking? She smiled slyly and continued. Look at this. Isn't this nice? A candy apple looks good. I normally don't even like candy apples. It's a bit early for us to have children. That's not what I meant. It's just they ran by, a question came to mind. Besides, what children would we be having if you don't like them? Talking about children in general, everyone loves their own. Well, yeah, makes sense. By the way, there wants to shoot some targets. Ran to the booth with the pneumatic rifles to end that awkward conversation. I didn't manage to hit any of the targets, so he got no prizes. Kagome refused to shoot, but at the same time didn't make fun of my marksmanship. I thought it'd be worse. Worse how? Did you think I'd blind someone with a bullet? No, that's not what I meant. I thought the festival would be worse, more boring. Have you never been to a festival like this before? Have you? Well, yes, as a child. With your red-headed friend? Kagome reminded me of Himitsu, and I involuntarily looked around searching for 2 red braids in the crowd. Yeah, I didn't know anyone else in Japan when I was little, and our homes were next to each other. Nico-san, you don't have to make excuses. She didn't seem to notice that the mention of Himitsu had made me alerted. You haven't answered the question. Kagome grew noticeably sad and replied quietly. I have, when I was a kid, with my mother. Are those bad memories? No, it was fun. It's been 3 years already, but I still can't get used to not having her around. I suddenly felt terrible that I'd come to terms with my parents' deaths in so much less time. It's hard, I get it. And my grandfather, she made a little smile. What would he do without me? I like that smile a lot more. Very nice. Very good smile, right? Nico-san, recently it feels as if sometimes I'm happy our restaurant burned down. But that's wrong. I didn't know how to respond to that. Of course it was hard for her to carry the entire restaurant on her shoulders, with her grandfather being of little help. And with life like she had more likely skipped university and spend the rest of her life serving ramen. In a way, her current life was somewhat easier for Kagome. At least she was in charge of her life. I'm worried about Granddad, but if he's well... Kagome exhaled loudly, looking at me and smiled. What do you think, Nico-san? About what? I pretended not to understand. So, do you like our current life? Like it? It's not exactly the word I used to describe our situation. Nico-san. Kagome stopped and stomped her foot. Of course, she was wearing her usual shoes instead of a geta. Flip-flops, sandal. Yeah. I'm just trying to collect my thoughts and figure out what was going on and how to live from now on. You know, not everything comes easily to me. And if I get together with a girl, well, I didn't want to tell her directly that she wasn't my first. If I liked a girl, I usually don't expect her to reciprocate. And if we get together, it usually surprises me. You're underestimating yourself. Her patronizing tone sounded inappropriate, and her words hurt me a little. We approached a booth with a scheduled for the festival. Look, there are fireworks on soon. Let's find somewhere high up. I grabbed Kagome by the hand and ran to the torii, beyond which stone steps went up. It's a gate. Alright guys, it's a gate. You understand? Alright, torii. To get to a Japanese temple, you usually have to go up a set of stairs. The number, altitude, and angle of the stairway differs greatly and depends a lot on whether it's a Shinto or a Buddhist temple. And there was more to it. Some say that the more steps there are, the more powerful of a deity lives in the temple. Judging by the length of the stairway, the local village wasn't guarded by the strongest of spirits. Walked away from the noise of the festival. It got no only quieter but colder. I looked around like I expected to see a fox or a were-raccoon. Nico-san! Kagome stepped behind me and for some reason looked extremely embarrassed. It's a bit empty here. I couldn't come up with a better line. Kagome didn't say a word, but studying at the ground under her feet. If you don't like it here... Oh, that's not it. She started up. It's just I only realized now how quickly everything has been developing. Developing? I mean our relationship. She grew embarrassed again. Well, yeah. Really was going quickly. Just a day ago I realized I loved her. And now we're already starting to make plans for our life together. A relationship that developed in Tokyo, like between 2 normal teenagers, we would have probably only had our first date. Sorry if I'm rushing. No, it's not your fault. I've been thinking the same the entire time. Thinking about what? I've always liked you, Niku-san. Kagome suddenly blurted out and blushed, as if she was trying to resolve this awkward situation with the exclamation. But I was surprised. The mere fact that she had reciprocated already seemed unbelievable, so I couldn't even imagine Kagome had always liked me. Tingles ran down my spine and my eyes began to tear up against my will. Aww. I approached her, gave her a kiss, and at that moment fireworks shot up in the sky. In the distance, I could hear the happy sounds of the villagers gathered for the festival, but to me, there was only two of us in the entire universe. I could feel my love for Kagome with every muscle, nerve, and synapse in my brain. A pleasant warmth ran all through my body, and I forgot about the cold of the night. I was sure Kagome felt the same. Finally, we pulled away from each other. You should thank me. Do you know how hard it is for a girl to confess something like this? Thank you. Not that it was any easier for me. But Nico-san, what are we supposed to do next? Her mood soured again, and suddenly she desperately reminded me of Himitsu, in that she seemed ready to agree with any decision I made and rely on me for everything. But I had a pretty bad idea for what we were supposed to do next. But in a moment like that, I absolutely couldn't show weakness or indecisiveness. We can run away. Somewhere close to the sea, for example, somewhere far where no one would know us, and where we'd never be found. What about my grandfather and Dad? That seemed to be the first time she'd mentioned her father in weeks. I didn't have answers to all her questions. I could barely handle our simple little life in the village. You'll be able to visit your grandfather in Tokyo sometimes, right? Kagome nodded happily, but I knew she was pretending too. After all, there are people living everywhere, so we can adapt too. Maybe we can open a restaurant. No way. You don't want to? And a liquor store. We don't need education or connections to that. These CGs are cute. I know. Look how cute Himitsu looks. Or not Himitsu, Kagome. You know what I mean. But you do need money. Well, earn it. You're good at saving, and I'll listen to whatever you say. That's hard to believe. I swear on my heart. I actually crossed it, and Kagome laughed. Silence came unexpectedly, less like a sea breeze. Of course, Kagome was just playing along with me. She didn't even believe we'd be safe anywhere in Japan, but I was grateful to her for that. And every crime as its statute of limitations. Was that really true? Had we committed a crime? Well, how do I put it? At least kidnapping already seemed so distant, like a memory from another life. But Ellie hadn't forgotten it, and neither had Kobayashi-jun. Kagome frowned for a moment, but then smiled again. My God, be my judge. She also crossed herself, but other way around. I didn't know you had such a good sense of humor. What? You thought I was only capable of irony? You know the first rule of Sarcasm Club? Be more sarcastic. Oh, we got an Einstein here. Kagome smiled, but more out of politeness. So then, we're going to live like husband and wife? Seems so. It was my turn to be embarrassed. Funnily enough, before Kagome said that, I hadn't thought of any of this could embarrass me. We were living together, but what choice did we have? She turned away from me as if wanting to observe the people having fun at the festival. If you want me to, there would be time for that. All right, then. All right. Shall we go? Let's go. We joined hands and walked down the stone steps to join the festivities. Of course, celebrations in Tokyo were on a much greater scale. 10 minutes were enough for us to see the whole place, and now we were just walking in circles, passing the same stalls over and over. It was difficult to imagine that after the conversation I'd be able to behave as if nothing happened around Kagome. Both of us fell into wishful thinking, in the heat of the moment saying things we didn't believe. Could it be called a blatant lie? Sometimes to cheer up a loved one, there's nothing wrong with presenting an unlikely possibility as something as that is destined to happen. Maybe the corporation would get off our backs one day. After all, Ellie was safe and sound. But it seemed to me that the only way that would happen was after Kobayashi-jun's death, and that old man could outlive us all. Nico-san, are you tired? Not really. I was mostly just bored by walking in a circle, but at the same time, being around other people this festive evening made our newborn relationship gradually feel legitimate. I am, though. Shall we go home? Home? Kagome drawled sadly, and there was something about that sigh that threatened to shatter the whole idyll of the moment. Home isn't walls and things. You know, when my parents died, my old house in Tokyo started to seem alien to me. But now my home is wherever you are. Nico-san. Kagome gripped my hand tighter. I need to leave you for a minute. All right, I'll wait for you here. As soon as Kagome left me, I was called by a familiar voice. Nico-kun! There were many ways this evening could have ended, but this was the one I desired the least. Oh, snap. It's Himitsu. Is this what we call an uh-oh? Alright. Himitsu stood right in front of me. Once when we were still in middle school, we were walking home after classes and chatting about daily stuff. Nico-kun will be starting in the same school soon. Mitsu said happily. You managed to get in. Of course I will. Do you really doubt that? Not really. I indeed didn't. And there isn't much time left. She suddenly said with notes of sadness. What do you mean? All this, going to school together and returning home, living across from each other? Why would it so suddenly end? Because we'll grow up. To be frank, at that moment our careless life seemed endless to me. It was difficult to imagine what would be awaiting us. And the graduation appeared to be endlessly far from the future. But when I grow up, I'll definitely need to get myself a beautiful wife. Nico-kun! She pouted just like a hamster. Don't worry, I'll invite you to the wedding. Only if I'm the bride. Aww. All those years Himitsu had lived by the thought that we'd always be together. She didn't need anything physical as long as I was around. But I wasn't there anymore. To be honest, I didn't feel guilty for the fact that the fate had guided us down a different paths. Of course I felt sorry for Himitsu, but such is life. Feelings aren't always mutual. Right now I was much more worried about how she'd react if she saw me with Kagome. What'd she do and who'd she talk to? Nico-kun, what are you doing here? I stood there with my back to Himitsu and could feel her piercing gaze on me. Of course she wouldn't do anything that would hurt me, at least in her opinion. The problem was we had very different ideas of what my well-being meant. It really wasn't a good idea to go to this festival. If not run away as soon as possible, we should at least have laid low a few days until Himitsu would go back to Tokyo. Let's find a place to talk. I roughly grabbed her by the hand and pulled her aside. Ouch, Nico-kun, that hurts! Himitsu couldn't meet Kagome under any circumstances. Sorry, I said tersely, in a tone that hardly sounded apologetic. What are you doing here? You said you wouldn't come. Grandma is feeling better, so I... She stopped and frowned. And you, Nico-kun, what are you doing here? Me? I just heard about the festival from you and decided to come take a look. Remember how we would go to the festival at the river when we were kids? You know, where the old temple is. I was spitting out the words like a machine gun, as if that could delay the inevitable. So yeah, remember the candy apples from there? You also have them here, can you imagine? Let's go and try them, they're delicious. Tried to grab Himitsu by the hand again, more carefully this time, but she pulled away and didn't move an inch. You couldn't just force her and pull this resisting fragile girl away from the crowd. People were looking. Sunshine, I said out of habit, but immediately stopped. Himitsu, we need to go somewhere else. Why, Nico-kun? Are you hiding something from me? Or someone. Of course I could just run away, but that would only make Himitsu more suspicious. It would also increase the chance she'd see Kagome. But the clock was ticking, and with every second grew the understanding that the inevitable would happen nonetheless. Just don't worry. Why should I worry? You shouldn't, that's what I'm saying. Why shouldn't I worry, Nico-kun? Himitsu was looking at me attentively, but there was disbelief in her eyes, growing with each word I said. It's just, you see, I don't know what you heard about me in Iwamura when you think about all that, but obviously I couldn't tell her that we hadn't kidnapped Ellie, at the very minimum because that was a lie. Even if something did happen, there are perfectly good reasons for it all. Nico-kun! Suddenly Himitsu almost shouted. What are you trying to achieve here? If you aren't going to tell me the truth, don't say anything at all. I'm tired of all your omissions and lies. But I'm not lying. Tried to say timidly, but I clearly made the situation worse. You're really innocent. Why did you run away and why are you hiding now? And if you aren't, I want to believe that you had your reasons to do what you did, but when you behave like this, I believe it less and less. Nico-kun, it's Iwamura-senpai who made you do it, right? Tell me what's happened. Of course, it would be stupid to deny that Kagome had taken the lead in what happened, but saying that she'd forced me to do anything was an overstatement. Especially now that I confessed my love to her and she responded with the same. Moreover, Himitsu's words evoked his desire to protect Kagome and me, even against common sense. Of course Ellie didn't do anything wrong, but you can't say the same for her grandfather. Nico-kun, I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, but this is kidnapping you're talking about. You're talking about it so casually, like you don't understand how serious this all is. Oh no, I understand it perfectly well how serious it is. That's why I want to keep you out of it. Sorry, Nico-kun, but I don't believe you. Kagome appeared in the crowd, clearly looking for me. Let's not do this here. I made one last attempt. Why are you constantly trying to get away from me? Why are you constantly trying to get me away from here? Himitsu was getting more and more angry, and no longer looked like herself. Because you'll take it the wrong way. Nico-san! Kagome finally noticed me and waved. But fine, it's too late now. Too late for what? Nico-san! Then Himitsu heard her too. Kagome ran up to us, the happy smile on her face immediately giving way to surprised and then disappointed. It's you! Iwamura-senpai? Himitsu was surprised too, but then immediately attacked me. I knew it, Nico-kun! trying to convince her that she misunderstood something was not only pointless, but dangerous. What are you doing here? Not that Kagome had any intention of staying quiet either. Hang on a second again. Give me a second. Okay. That's what I was supposed to be asking you, Iwamura-senpai. I have a right to be here. What right? Nico-kun, did you really not tell her that my grandma lives nearby? Mitsu asked maliciously, totally unlike herself. Well, I mean, Nico-san. Kagome cast a wrathful look at me, but immediately shifted her gaze to Himitsu. And we're here. She started as if trying to explain herself, but immediately turned angry. How's that any of your business? And you have the audacity to say that after everything you've done, and what you dragged Nico-kun into? Haven't dragged him into anything. So you aren't denying that you kidnapped Kobayashi-senpai? What are you, a policewoman? Why are you interrogating me? Girls. Try to interfere timidly, even though I knew it was useless. If not for you, Nico-kun would be doing fine. They seemed to be about to start pulling each other's hair, and Kagome suddenly softened. If Nico-kun wanted to, he would have long chosen you, and we wouldn't be talking now. But he chose me, so you really have no right to question him whether with or without reason. Nico-kun, is that true? What's true? I awkwardly try to play stupid. Yes, tell her, Nico-san. Tell her we're together now. Didn't know what to do. I looked like an idiot, but Kagome didn't seem to be concerned at all about that. I don't care how you lured him in, whether you're better with someone else, but I've known Nico-kun in my entire life. I know that he's very capable of doing stupid things when he doesn't have someone to look after him. What is he, your pet or toy? Grow up already. Kagome grinned. I just wanted to be happy, him to be happy, and I have no idea what you want. I believe Nico-san can decide what makes him happy himself. So to help him decide himself, you made Nico-kun an accomplice to a kidnapping, and forced him to run away and hide here? You've really done a lot for him. What if Nico-kun goes to jail? What, will you say that's for his own good too? Himitsu, don't exaggerate. I almost called her Sunshine. Me? Exaggerating? She flung her arms up in the air. If anything, I'm understating, and even Catty-chan was so destructive to you. Nico-kun, do you really think you love her? Where will that bring you? Just come back to Tokyo with me. Dad can help you. No way. Shut up, you! Himitsu suddenly shouted. She was so aggressive I could barely recognize my childhood friend. Himitsu, calm down. Come on, calm down. I wanted to come closer to her, but she waved her hand, stopping me. You don't understand that yourself, Nico-kun. I don't need you. Nobody wants your help. We'll handle it ourselves. Kagome switched to shouting too. Girls, calm down already, I begged. We were standing a bit away from the main celebration, but people had still started throwing glances in our direction. Here in the countryside, loud outbursts were even more inappropriate by Japanese standards than in Tokyo. Iwamura-senpai, you're a criminal. If there's nothing else to call you, it's dangerous for Nico-kun to be in your company. He used to be fine in my company, right, Nico-san? I can't just leave things like this. So what are you going to do? I'll tell my father. He'll figure out what to do. Do you really believe that Nico-san would be better off for it? Yeah, this is no good, guys. If only you knew what we had to do. Blah blah blah. She said we again, but this time Kagome's choice of words didn't upset me like it used to. If you only knew, you wouldn't be saying this. I don't know and I don't want to. A crime is a crime. Nico-kun. Himitsu turned to me and pleaded. Let's go to my grandma's place. I'll call for Dad from there, and he'll come pick us up. If you really love him, you should be more concerned with what Nico-san wants, rather than what your inflamed conscience is telling you. I seem to have been totally neglected to the role of an inanimate object in their argument, a symbol that the both warring states strive to acquire, yet has no instinctive value. When I say something, I raise my voice. Himitsu, I can't go back to Tokyo. We can't go back. At least not now, when the circumstances are against us. I'd really like to explain everything to you, but it might put you in danger. Put her in danger? Kagome interrupted, chuckling loudly. Nico-san, when between two stools, you fall to the ground. I had to admit that she was right, no matter how much I wanted to believe her otherwise. I had to worry about myself, about Kagome, but clearly not about Himitsu. She wasn't in any danger. The corporation wasn't after her. I've been saying all that out of habit. Nico-kun, are you going to sacrifice 10 years of our friendship for... She was huffing and apparently trying to find an appropriate description for Kagome. What have you found in her? Maybe you're that good at spreading your legs, Iwamura-san. Mitsu finally exploded. Christ, it's not about that at all. Then what is it about, Nico-kun? What? Just want to help you. I don't understand why you're acting like this. Do I really not matter to you anymore? It's not about you at all. But I can't leave it like this. When we met in the morning, I still hoped that... And now, she was weeping, even slightly squealing at times. Things were getting dangerous. We would end up having to talk to the police. Sunshine, enough. Listen, Nico-kun, if you can't help yourself, I will. Well, Mitsu yelled and ran away. Are we in trouble, guys? Are we dead? Are we doomed? Alright, here we go. Yelled and ran away. In a situation where I would have tried to stop her, but not at this moment, when we had become the main attraction of the festival. She met her in the morning. Kagome's cold, calm voice cut into my back like an icicle. Nico-san, you really do lie always into everyone. When I had finally believed that you were going to be honest with me, you really changed sides as soon as you saw your red fox. How can I ever trust you, Nico-san? There was more regret in her words than anger. I just knew you'd react like this, so I didn't tell you. Besides, Himitsu told me she wouldn't go to the festival. She came here because her grandmother got sick. I was supposed to go back to Tokyo soon. What difference would it make? You're pathetic. Kagome smirked sadly, turned around and slowly walked away from the paper lanterns, neck stalls, and the cheering crowd. I was left alone, endlessly removed from all the smiles, laughter, and happiness around me. We might be in trouble. Yeah, especially if her dad finds out. If Himitsu's dad finds out, we're gonna be in big trouble. God damn it, why did I even do wrong here? Had I been the one to bring Himitsu to this village, to lead her there? On the other hand, if I had told Kagome about her, we could have just decided to not go to the festival and everything would have ended as it had. Maybe I just didn't want the yukata I'd spent so much money on to go to waste, but it was hard to acknowledge that for such a petty reason and put not only our safety at risk, but also my new barely day-old relationship with Kagome. The crowd quickly forgot about me and continued to talk and laugh. As much as they'd been interested in our quarrel a moment ago, they couldn't care less about it. They couldn't care less once it was over. After all, in their lives, other people were just a flash of a lamppost outside of the window on a car driving down the highway of existence. Mitsu wasn't just a flash to me, but it felt like I left her light behind me, didn't want mine, and Kagome's life passed to diverge as well. After all that, I only wanted one thing to do and take a monstrous amount of sake as soon as possible and fall into oblivion. The whole time we lived there, I'd only drunk out of necessity with other minors, and even then very carefully. When I came back from the hotel from the bar, do a few laps around the village to get some air, then returned to our room sober. Kagome didn't show much reaction to it anyway, knowing that such the Japanese tradition to drink was your coworkers. Want to trick myself into complete oblivion and disconnect from reality for a day. Sometimes your legs, following an impulse beyond understanding, bring you to a bottle on their own accord, like they kick your brain out of the driver's seat. Just a moment, I stopped thinking about Himitsu, Kagome, and what I had to do next. Having stopped at the stall with alcoholic drinks and gone and asked for a full glass and froze. Surely wasn't the time. Would just not solve the problem, it would make it worse. The alcohol vendor at the stall looked at me confused, and I looked at him. Sorry. I bowed and basically ran away, into the cold night toward the village and the old hotel, to the lonely, sad girl who I loved. Almost all the windows were dark. There usually weren't many people on the streets even during the day, and now the village looked even more like a ghost town. All the villagers were having fun at the festival, but the only thing I wanted to clear things up with Kagome as soon as possible was sitting at the window in their usual pose, looking out at the empty street as had become custom to her. When I entered the room, she blub uttered without even turning to me. I thought to take my stuff and leave, except I have nowhere to go. A certain Russian poet once wrote of that love's boat has smashed against the daily grind. Do you want it to be like that for us too? Nico-san, is the problem you leaving your dirty socks everywhere? Well, no, of course not. I sighed and carefully sat behind the table, with dirty dishes covering it. I just want you to understand why I did what I did. Why you deceived me and possibly exposed us to danger. Well, let's not exaggerate. Himitsu isn't that kind of person. Well, go to her then. Why did you drag her yourself here? Kagome sobbed. Alright, I'm sorry. I wanted to come closer and hug her, but something stopped me. After all, I hadn't told her about meeting Himitsu for a reason. That being I expected exactly this kind of reaction. Sometimes what we call the truth in a totally abstract concept. In the end, we all, or at least most of us, can see colors and tell red from green and blue, but in an objective reality they only differ by the length of each light wave. Everything else is just the perception of color created by our brains. If we were to talk about a more complicated matter, such as human relationships, was there any such a thing as completely wrong or completely right side? However, Kagome clearly believed there was. Was I supposed to refrain from pointless philosophizing and apologize and admit I was wrong? Or would I be better off sticking to my guns and trying to convince her that I wasn't hiding the truth out in any kind of malice? Uh-oh. Apologize or stand my ground? How about... I'm gonna stand my ground. Bleh. I understand what it looks like, but I really didn't think we'd run into Himitsu at the festival. And before you say anything else, I just know that I wanted the best for us. The best for us, Nico-san? Kagome smirked and finally turned to me. So you really think your excuses changes anything? Well, shoot me if you want. I folded my hands in a praying gesture and stood on my knees. Maybe I should. She slowly stood up, walked to the wardrobe, opened it, and started to take her things out. What are you doing? I definitely hadn't expected this turn of events, but Kagome didn't answer, doing everything slowly, methodically, and even provocatively carefully. Where are you even going this late at night? I asked, not even trying to hide my irritation. After that nice chat with your red-haired friend, I'm sure I can't stay here any longer. And where would we go? It's too late now. There are no trains. You can go to your friend, Nico-san. She lives nearby, right? I'm sure she'll be happy. Stop it already. I grabbed Kagome's hand, but she didn't react at all, pretending I wasn't even there. An awkward silence descended upon us, because I didn't know what to do next. She didn't seem to care at all. Meanwhile, I heard joyful cheering outside, likely drunken villagers returning from the festival. Nico-san, I understand I can't go anywhere right now, but I'll take the first train tomorrow. I'll let her go. You can come with me. God, but where? Haven't decided yet. I wasn't quite able to carry on this conversation, so I just left the room and went to wander the street. Occasionally I passed by happy people returning to their homes. They smiled at me, and I would force out a smile in return. When I returned, Kagome had already gone to sleep. I decided to take counsel with my pillow and went to bed as well, having pulled my futon to the corner of the room. This evening had seemingly exhausted me completely, but I couldn't fall asleep for all the good in the world. BRB, Eliza. Alrighty. Sounds good. Kagome lay quietly, and I listened to the silence, but I couldn't even hear her breathing. So the sudden encounter with Himitsu had ruined all my plans for a peaceful life that had seemed to start taking shape. I couldn't really blame Kagome or believe she overreacted. It was any other person in Himitsu's place, a friend of stranger, that could theoretically pose a threat to us. I would have been the first to rush and pack our suitcases. So were my attempts to justify Himitsu's irrational even harmful? Of course, it didn't necessarily mean she'd immediately run off and tell her father everything, or report to the corporation, and of course it didn't mean that we'd immediately be found, captured, or tortured, or killed. But the number of assumptions were immeasurably high. Was I prepared to put Kagome at risk to protect not even Himitsu? No, my belief in Himitsu's loyalty and common sense. So what if I would end up right where the risk of failure was so high? Kagome wanted to leave, we had to leave in the morning. Tossed and turned for at least another hour and was about to fall asleep when I suddenly heard unfamiliar voices downstairs. Someone seemed to be loudly arguing with the landlady in the lobby. Pushed myself up and listened in. Hard to make out the details, but it seemed like the late guest spelled out my surname several times, very clearly Anoken. I froze as if that would save me from what was coming. But how could they have gotten here so quickly? Even if Himitsu had run straight home, called her father, who immediately came forward to inform the corporation. Oh, there was no time to think. Shook Kagome a few times, but she wasn't in a hurry to wake up. I jerked her up from the futon. You got to run. Now! What's happening, Nico-san? She looked somewhere past me with sleepy eyes. They've come for us. They're downstairs. Thank God we had the essentials, documents, and money in a small bag in order to ensure a swift escape if we needed. Hoped there would be no need for it, but life once again had other plans. Nico-san! Apparently Kagome had finally started to understand what was happening. We're leaving, quietly. Snuck to the second staircase and took the back exit. It was our luck the old hotel had one. Hang on a minute again, guys. Just checking something. Don't mind me. Alright, hotel had one. We noticed that Kagome was still wearing her yukata once we got outside. She noticed my glance and frowned. What was so urgent that I couldn't even change my clothes? I'll tell you on the way. walking quickly but not running, while trying to remain in the shadows. Even at the night, the street was lit pretty brightly. They wouldn't expect it. Nico-san? Kagome stepped and pulled her hand away out of mine. One moment you don't want to leave, the next you want waking me up in the middle of the night and drag me who knows where. Explain yourself. Oh, snap. He looked around, but nobody was in pursuit. You are right. About Himitsu, you were right. I heard someone ask the lady about me on the ground floor. About you? Gomi's face dropped. She finally understood how serious the situation was. Heard them say my surname a few times. I doubt it was just a courtesy visit. Whatever it was, I don't intend to stick around to find out what they need from me. Painful to me to acknowledge that Himitsu really had turned us in, but I was even more surprised by how quick the corporation reacted. Do they have agents in every Japanese backwater or what? So they found us after all. She sighed in resignation. You can scold me later. Right now we need to get to the station and find out at when the station early train will be there. Maybe we'll go to the sea or... No, Nico-san. Kagome said quietly, lowering her head. What do you mean no? We aren't going to run and hide anymore. Then what are we going to do? He asked, confused. They found us here, they'll find us anywhere. But it was Himitsu, you were right. Not just about her. Will you want to hide your entire life, constantly looking over your shoulder, tripping at every rustling branch? Today you heard them in time, but tomorrow they'll capture us in our sleep. I can't live like this, I don't want to. What should we do? What are you suggesting? To return to Tokyo. Tokyo? I often walk around Kagome a few times, like if she was an exotic sculpture. Should we go straight to Kobayashi Corporation's building? Make their job easier? Huh? What do you think? Nico-san, I'm serious. I can see that. That's what scares me the most. We have to go back. We don't have some secret planet suicide. She remained quiet, with her lips sealed and her fixed gaze on me. You don't, right? Kagome, are you hiding something from me? We're going to have this conversation again. We agree not to lie to each other anymore. I haven't lied to you, Nico-san. You haven't been telling me something. What's the difference? I was mad beyond measure. Then tell me now, I'm listening. Kagome clearly wasn't going to say a thing. Let's just resolve the problem at hand and get on the train, then we can talk. You? I was still angry, but I didn't know how to object to that. One way or another, getting out of here was currently our main task. It didn't matter where we were going, to the seaside or toward Tokyo. Fine, let's go. The early train was arriving at the station at 4 o'clock in the morning, silently standing on the platform, keeping a considerable distance from each other. Hey, welcome back, Eliza. Soon enough, the station master noticed us, came closer, asked where we'd be going at such an early hour, and treated us with some hot tea. Occasionally casting glances at the street, afraid that the people who come for us at the hotel would also be smart enough to check the situation. But the time was going by, the villagers were sleeping tightly and quietly as usual, and no strangers were disturbing its peace. Can I imagine what Kagome was hiding from me? Might go soon, because you're talking to a therapist online. Alrighty. I wish you luck with that, Eliza, when the time comes. How was she only talking about it now? Why not before? I was trying to guess where it could be about, but nothing would come to mind. Only wanted to get somewhere warm and sleep. Train finally arrived. I virtually stormed into the carriage, dragging Kagome along. Its few passengers were sleeping in different, but equally uncomfortable poses. The thought that someone could be spending several hours to commute to Tokyo the same time back every day frightened me. No matter how heavy the work in the mind was, it was at least close to the hotel where we lived. Kagome was sitting next to me and seemed to be completely detached from reality. I, in turn, was so tired that I couldn't concentrate on anything. Then I remembered. Why were we going back to Tokyo? So we're going back just like you wanted. Will you tell me why now? What, why now, Nico-san? Her words sounded much like a request to not continue this conversation. What have you been hiding from me? Calling it whatever you want. Why are we going into the lair of our enemy? So to say, instead of running away. She remained silent, and I had no energy left to be angry. Kagome, do you not respect me at all? What makes you say that, Nico-san? She finally showed her some interest. You're hiding something. Do you not trust, or are you afraid that I wouldn't handle the truth, or what? I'm always honest with you, after all. Not that I had much to hide, even if I wanted to. Get to you in 5 minutes. Alrighty. Sounds good. What's so important is that you're risking our relationship for it? Nico-san, there's no need to be so dramatic. Dramatic? I laughed genuinely. And here I thought we should be treated Kobayashi Corporation more than seriously. Kagome sighed and lowered her head. Every person has some things, personal things. She was barely managing to pick the words, and it was clear the conversation wasn't easy for her. Personal space, you know? Not trying to invade yours. God, what personal space can there be here? I exclaimed and flung my arms up in the air. You know, in prison, your personal space is at best a cot meter and a half by one. You sleep in futons in Japanese prisons. Kagome corrected me for some reason. It doesn't matter. Even worse than, and it's not what I'm talking about. Don't you feel sorry for me at all? I'm coming with you, but I have absolutely no idea what to be prepared for. Come on, put yourself in my shoes. You didn't like it when I didn't tell you about Himitsu. Fine, Nico-san. She suddenly turned away as if she noticed something important outside the window. This was about to peek over the horizon, the sky in the east lighting up with all the shades of pink, red, and yellow. Meeting the dawn after a sleepless night is completely different from waking up early. In the first case, you feel as if you're stuck in the past. The entire world prepares for the new day, wakens from its sleep and faces the sun, resting and refreshed. Meanwhile, you yawn and desperately try to keep your eyes open. You're surprised by the fact that the night has passed by so quickly. You intend to share your secret with me before I fall asleep. You better hurry. Nico-san, I've never told you about my mother. She began in a tone that would make you think she was giving a boring lecture. She died from cancer. Before that, we'd been living in Shiroken, living a pretty decent, comfortable life. I kept quiet and listened to her carefully. It often considered polite among Japanese to react with some short cues during the conversation, thus indicating they are interested in what the other side is saying, but I kept quiet and listened to her carefully. I know, poor Kagome. And I'd like to say that Mom had achieved everything on her own, but Kagome sighed deeply and summoned her courage. She was Kobayashi Jun's daughter. What? I understood what the meaning of each separate word, but I couldn't quite link them together in my head, making them form a unit of information. You know, right? It's crazy. Hang on, give me a second, guys. Okay. When we was young, we had an affair with a maid, and of course an illegitimate child would have jeopardized this career. I was supposed to know about it, but when my mother was dying, she had decided to tell me the truth. How was I supposed to react to this? Perhaps if I had been in Kagome's place, I would have spoken about this earlier. So what are you going to do? I'm tired of running away and hiding. If you care so much about one of his granddaughters, you have to show some respect to the other. Indeed, many things that I previously couldn't quite understand were starting to make sense, but suddenly a very logical question came to my mind. And Kobayashi Jun, does he know? Mom told me he did. He hadn't been captured for a while while waiting at the mailbox. Had been allowed to freely leave Tokyo. I suddenly recalled a plethora of other situations wherein we'd just gotten lucky. So it seemed that the old Kobayashi was projecting a second granddaughter after all, in his own way. This is too unexpected. I'll need time to digest something like this. Well, you do that, and I'll go to sleep. Gomi put her head on my shoulder and closed her eyes. So Kagome is, related to Kobayashi Jun? Was that what I was getting from that? Yeah, sorry, this is just, nonsense reading. If you want to read this yourself, then you should get the game yourself, or pause the dialogue, and then you can read it to yourself, and you can do it, and it will be cool. Loading. It's the 29th. Almost Halloween. Hadn't been that long since we left Tokyo, but when I walked out of the platform of the capital's railway station, it seemed to me that the city has changed. Maybe it was because it got noticeably colder than before. Winter was persistently knocking at the season's door. Of course, in this part of Japan, winters weren't as severe as in Russia, so the weather would be more or less the same for the next few months, maybe excluding a few rare frosts. Reached my district by the subway. Actually, I wasn't going to go back home, but Kagome desperately wanted to see her grandfather. So we're in Tokyo again. What's next? I have to see my dad. She came closer and looked me in the eyes pleadingly. Nico-san, I tried to live on, thinking it was all over, that my father was gone. I clung on to you, my feelings for you. But it's not right. Even if it hadn't been for your red-haired friend, they would have found us sooner or later anyway. We can't hide from Kobayashi Corporation anywhere. And even if we could, do you really want to live your life like that? Yesterday you talked to about children. Do you want our children to grow up in constant fear? I had nothing to say against her heartfelt monologue. Last time, Kyosuke had reported that Moriyuki-san was doing well, but of course Kagome wasn't satisfied with that. My phone was most likely tapped, but Kagome remained adamant. She called her grandfather from a telephone box. Do you remember the place we'd meet when I was little? It was something like a secret cipher the only two of them knew. Do you really think that Moriyuki-san wouldn't be followed, or won't be followed? Sorry, I gotta check something again. Call me, like, para-nerd. Okay. Yeah, we still have a lot to go with this chapter, by the way, guys. Hopefully next time we play this, we can complete it, but it's long. Kagome's route is very, very long. Even if he is, she responded as if I'd upset her. If Kobayashi Jun ever wanted to hurt me, he had every opportunity and plenty of time to do so. Why didn't you just talk to him when you found out? I mean, from your mother. I finally summoned the courage to ask her, even though I was sure it wasn't the most fun topic for Kagome. And I was right. He wasn't burning with desire to contact me himself, even though he knew we were related. He knew how my mom had suffered. Indeed, that day at the Kobayashi Corporation building, I had been the one inviting him to meet him. It seemed strange to me even then. I couldn't understand the situation, even when my mom died. Kagome sniffed, almost about to fall into tears. When I really needed help, I finally understood the reasons for her attitude toward Ellie a bit better than usual. Of course, it would have been easy to accuse Iwamura of envy, how Ellie had it at all and she had nothing. But there was a clear realization in my mind that in Kagome's position I wouldn't have felt the same. Even after her mother, Kobayashi Jun's own daughter, died, he refused to act. It was no wonder that Kagome hated not only him but everyone associated with him. Although Ellie, of course, was blameless, so I just don't want to talk about it. Alright. Alright. We were meeting her grandfather by the waterfront near the burned-down restaurant. By then I had already given up trying to apply any logic to the corporation's actions, or lack thereof, so I'd also given up on looking over my shoulder all the time. Who would have thought? Kagome suddenly smirked. What is it? I've always hated the salty air, the constant smell of fish, and all the noise of yelling, but now I feel... Nostalgia? I finished her line gently. Yes, I guess it is nostalgia. Nostalgia is when you remember fondly the things that used to seem ordinary. The last thing I want to remember is the stench of fish. Kagome parried stubbornly but smiled. Moriyuki-san was already waiting for us. While they hugged each other, I stood aside feeling awkward. Would it be a good idea to tell him Kagome and I were a thing? Are you well? You seem to have lost some weight. Growing up, then getting old, a person basically comes full circle, and in a sense becomes a child again. Watching the reunion, I involuntarily smiled that natural, kind smile that comes to your face when you watch small children. I had to work a lot, Grandpa, but we're doing fine. I didn't mind, and my experience working at the restaurant helped a lot too. Nico-kun. He released Kagome from his embrace and turned to me. I'm very grateful that you've been taking care of my granddaughter. Then he gave me a low bow. No, it's fine, don't. I felt awkward. How have you been, Grandpa? Pretty well, thank God. Kyosuke-kun helped me a lot. He looked at me apologetically, then smiled. Here, take this. He handed Kagome a pretty weighty bundle. What? No, I can't accept this. Well, after buying that yukata, we could definitely use some money. I didn't know how much Tokyo hotels cost, but they would obviously be more expensive than the room in a mining village hundreds of kilometers away from the capital. Take it, I whispered quietly, but Kagome immediately turned to me and exclaimed, Nico-san, how could we do that? Nico-kun is right, you two could use the money. He changed his approach and handed the package over to me. I quickly put it in my pocket, tried to ignore Kagome's angry look. Grandpa, where did you get so much money? I remembered I had a deposit in a bank. There was no joy in getting old. You forget everything. But we can't keep hiding forever. We return to Tokyo to... Kagome stopped mid-word, as if something had made her lose her train of thought. I think it's time for me to finally clear things up with Kobayashi Jun and get my dad back. Never discussed this, but Mom... She suddenly went quiet and cast a quick glance at me as if looking for support. Yeah, the grandpa's back. Hooray, I told Nico-san. So suddenly Kagome laughed. How could I hide it from him after everything we've been through? Grandpa, you know my mother was really Kobayashi Jun's daughter, right? After those words, Moriyuki kept smiling, not even batting an eye. It was clear that he had no idea what Kagome was talking about. So you didn't? Kagome-chan, what are you talking about? You know, son. Suddenly knit his thick eyebrows together, and for the first time I could see a glint of intelligence in his eyes. Did you realize that Shinji and your mother hadn't always been on good terms? I know you know San's mother a little, but I had no idea who her father was, and Shinji didn't talk much about his family life. A divorce hit him hard, so he threw himself into his work. Sorry to interrupt, but the old man and his granddaughter turned to me with the same expressive of discontent in their eyes I had become so familiar with lately. It doesn't seem like Kobayashi-jun is particularly bothered by having illegitimate children otherwise. I stopped because I was about to say what was probably very insensitive, or he would have dealt with the problem long ago. Kagome finished for me. Is that what you wanted to say, Nico-san? I didn't respond, but averted my gaze in embarrassment. But Kagome-chan, what are you going to do next? Where are you going to live? I'll call you myself tomorrow, all the more or less the same. But Moriyuki-san froze for a moment and shifted his gaze to me and bowed not so deeply this time. I'm counting on you, Nico-kun. Your therapist is late? Oh no. What did the therapists do these days? You know what I mean? Don't even know what I just said there, but you understand, right? After he left, I slowly counted the money in the bundle. Wow! Whistled in surprise, it was a solid roll of large bills. Would you want to give them to me, Nico-san? No, let's consider it payment for my services. What services? My services, you know. You don't know. You don't know, but thumbs up. Sign. Kagome was about to express her indignation, but said nothing in the end. Alright, it's going to get dark soon. We gotta find a safe place to sleep. The cheap Tokyo hotel I chose didn't look much different from the one we'd been living in just yesterday. Yes, it looked a bit newer, but mostly followed the same budget-friendly style. Maybe we should have gotten a room somewhere fancy with Moriyuki-san's money. They weren't as likely to look for us there. Besides, why not enjoy a little luxury before death? Kagome entered the room and gave it an examining look and sat on the bed. Just checking something. Ooh, again? Don't mind me, lads. Okay, don't mind me. Sat on the bed. So what made you choose this room? She asked playfully, patting the invitingly bouncy mattress. I wasn't even thinking about that. Fine. First I need to change. Kagome did indeed stand out. A yukata isn't exactly something you wear daily. Oh yeah, of course. So what are you waiting for? What am I waiting for? You got the money. Right, sorry. Kagome went to a clothing store by herself, and I just asked her not to go too far from the hotel. Meanwhile, I had to think things through. I didn't stop Kagome from coming to Tokyo, but I also couldn't let her go alone. But what were we supposed to do next? Obviously, she could no longer fight her desire to save her father, no matter what. After that failed attempt at blackmail, we had no other ways to influence the corporation. And to be frank, I doubted more and more with each passing day that Akira Shinji was still alive. She wore the exact same stuff, last time. She found the exact same stuff in the store. I didn't know what Kagome used to wear before, but she brought more or less the same clothes she'd been wearing. A pair of jeans and a simple sweater. At least she wouldn't stand out in a crowd. But it was already got dark when she returned. What took you so long? I was worried. Nico-san, I am a woman, you know. Yeah, right. I smirked, gave a meaningful look to the clothes she bought. Kagome threw a bag at me, the yukata falling out of it, and threw herself onto the bed. Waited for her to calm down. Maybe now you'll tell me your plan? While she was shopping, I've been desperately trying to come up with something, but to no avail. As if I were being forced to resolve one of the Millennium Challenges, I, a simple-minded, straight-C student, seemed to have hit an impenetrable wall. If you have one, of course. She grinned and looked as if she had already personally brought Kobayashi-jun to court. Do you think I'm as reckless as you are, Nico-san? I think you shouldn't forget that by kidnapping Ellie, you made the old man choose which of his granddaughters matters more to him. Kagome's facial expression immediately changed and she grit her teeth. He made his choice long ago. Exactly my point. So you want to say I dropped everything and came back to Tokyo without having thought of what I'll be doing here? Well, we had a good reason to drop everything. Although I really didn't believe Kagome had been acting on emotion. Deep down, she must have been sure Kobayashi-jun wouldn't hurt her. Wanted to believe that when we were hiding in that village, she'd been thinking of my safety first. All we've really done so far is exchange one hotel for another. This one closer to Kobayashi Corporation's office. Kagome said nothing, covering herself with a blanket, and turned away. If you really don't know what to do next, there's nothing wrong with that. You can talk to me. She didn't like showing her weaknesses, and no matter how you looked at it, having no plan was one. If we think it through together, we'll definitely come up with something. In reality, I didn't even believe that myself. Nico-kun, if you have nothing to say, it's better to just say nothing, she grumbled without turning around. I could understand her condition, at least wanted to think so. This kind of reaction to everything I said was starting to get on my nerves. Hurting like it's all my fault. Isn't it? Who decided I shouldn't know your headed friend was going to that festival? I told you, Himitsu said she wouldn't go. Himitsu said, "Ha! Who's more important to you, her or me? Kagome, please don't start this again." I walked to the window and looked outside, more for the sake of it than because I really hoped to see something there. What, are you looking for her? I loudly clicked my tongue, putting all my frustration into the sound. Not keeping you here, Nico-san. Enough already, I shouted, no longer able to deal with her unprovoked attacks. Surprisingly enough, the whole time we'd been living in the village, we never had a serious fight. I couldn't even recall any small ones. It only took 12 hours in Tokyo for Kagome to start treating me like a public enemy. Stop venting your anger on me. You told me earlier that you're Kobayashi Jun's granddaughter. Maybe you wanted to be in the situation in the first place. What situation? Kagome asked snidely, finally turned to me and threw the blanket off. No longer happy I came into your life, huh? Probably would have preferred to stay with your Himitsu and not have to deal with all these extra problems. And you only slept with me because there was no one better around. About to get offended and object, but I realized that there was actually some truth to Kagome's words. Meeting her had really put an end to my steady, peaceful, and even boring life. Had made me lose Himitsu's love and our friendship. I couldn't persuade myself, and all I wanted was that it wasn't true, but more importantly, what had I gotten in return? You know, maybe you're right, but we always find and lose something in life. I'm really glad I met you and fell in love with you, even if my life changed because of it. Kagome clearly hadn't expected that from me. She sat up in bed and stared at me without even trying to conceal her surprise. I don't want to go back to what I used to have. I want to move forward. Together! I'm just worried that it might get us killed, that's all. And I really want you to understand that and not hide anything from me, so we can overcome difficulties together, even if they seem impossible. Nico-san! Tears swelled up in Kagome's eyes. Sorry, I didn't mean that at all. I just don't want you to get hurt because of me. Overcome by emotion, I walked to her, hugged her, and stroked her hair. I understand. I just really don't know what to do next, and I'm afraid to admit it even to myself. I'm sorry. She was sobbing. I understand. We'll figure this all out somehow. The springy mattress really was conducive to intimacy, and here I was lying on top of Kagome, kissing her on the lips, then on the neck, then lower. Then lower, then higher, then lower, and in the middle, then to the side. Ooh, it's Halloween tomorrow. It's the 30th, right? 30 days is September. Yeah, 31st is October. Is Halloween. I was too often haunted by the feeling of helplessness. I didn't know what to do next, literally. It's not like I was unable to choose from a few different options, or that I doubted which one was best. Even after kidnapping Ellie, Kagome hadn't managed to get her father released, and the fact that Kobayashi Jun was her grandfather didn't change much. Perhaps she really was in less danger compared to me, but that only made me feel more powerless. I know, Halloween, you ready for it? Yeah, right. My love for Kagome felt nothing like the feeling I had for Catherine. I would wake up and smell the scent of hair, see a spark of joy in her eyes when she was joking, and be genuinely upset when she was angry. Not that we had been living together for that long, but it was already hard for me to imagine that it could one day end, especially so soon. When I woke up, Kagome wasn't there. There was no point in panicking right away. Who knew what she might have stepped out? The sun had only begun to rise above the horizon. I tossed and turned in bed, yawned a few times, and got up. In my half-asleep state, the hotel room seemed strange, and I thought I didn't want to stay here for long. I had to go clean up and brush my teeth when Kagome returned! Yay! Give me a hot second again, guys. Just giving a guess of you know? You understand my words? I was about to go clean. Good morning. However, her grim expression had made me refrain from a kiss. Did something happen? No, why would you think that? Where have you been? Just wanting to unwind. Unwind? I repeated, trying to figure out what she was thinking. But Kagome was unreadable. Nico-san, I'm sorry. I forgot that it was time for breakfast. It's alright. No worries. Good then, I'll go get us something. She responded without much interest. It's just the money? Alright, sure. I took a few bills out of the wallet without looking and handed them to her. Clearly much more than she was needed for a normal breakfast. Something seemed to have changed within Kagome overnight, and while she was out buying food, I was spiraling into my known thoughts, trying to understand what exactly. To no avail, though. Eventually, she came back with a bag of snacks and a couple of sodas. Not that I'd expect a feast, but usually Kagome cooked herself instead of buying stuff from vending machines. Is anything wrong, Nico-san? She noticed my confused expression. Well, no, everything's fine. We ate in silence. I avoided looking at Kagome while trying to figure out what I'd done wrong this time. What are your plans for the day, Nico-san? My plans? I asked her, puzzled, and even smirked slightly in surprise. What are yours? I for some reason thought we had a few problems to deal with. Yes, of course, she said again in a tone that sounded like it had nothing to do with her at all. It's a pity you've given up. Trying to get a reaction. I haven't given up, Nico-san, but to no effect. I knew coming back to Tokyo was a bad idea. I grumbled, and Kagome finally showed signs of life. What, so rescuing my father is a bad idea, you think? Well, what are you doing to rescue him? I'm 100% with you on that, but so far... I grabbed a pack of chips, fidgeted with it, and threw them back. We're sitting in this crummy hotel eating this, and you're acting like it should be this way. Did we really come back to Tokyo for this? Calm down, Nico-san. Kagome replied coldly. In truth, I was more worried about her indifference than anything else. It seemed that after the last night, something changed, and I was the one to blame for it. As if Kagome no longer saw a future for our relationship. But I just don't know how to express it clearly, without shouting and swearing. You know, I never felt like I was second fiddle before. I sighed deeply to summon my courage. You kidnapped Ellie, and I was presented with a fate accompli. You returned to Tokyo and again made it fate accompli. I'm not used to being led around like this. Kagome wasn't saying anything, just kept carefully straightened as a rapper. Fine, that's not even the main problem. If there's something you're thinking, share it with me. Otherwise, it's fatalism, apathy, whatever you want to call it. I don't even believe you really don't give a damn. You're just hiding it from me for some reason. Nico-san! Kagome finally raised her eyes to me, and I saw weariness in them that seemed to have come from nowhere. Then we heard muted shouts from behind a wall, a male and female voice. They were quarreling, the soundproofing between rooms leaving much to be desired. Do you want us to end like that? He hasn't come online yet. Oh my gosh. Did he get the time wrong, maybe? I bet he got the time wrong or something. What is he doing? Maybe he's waiting for you to do something? I don't know. This is way past what I know, Eliza. Hopefully he'll find ya. She remained still for quite a long time, but finally her face betrayed a poor, contained smile. Haha, Nico-san, I can't even get angry at you properly. Get angry at me? For what? Text him again? Yeah. I left with her and felt my anxiety gradually starting to retreat. Sorry for shouting at you. No, sorry for behaving like that. Guess I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. I was tempted to keep asking her questions, but restrained myself. Peace, then? Reached out to Kagome. Peace. She shook my hand. We walked outside because it was unbearable to stay in that tiny hotel room for the entire day. Maybe. Go for it, Eliza. And fresh air better simulates the brain. Although discussing our plans had already almost brought us to blows, so I tried not to think out loud. Nico-san, where did you go on dates with that American girl? Kagome suddenly asked me in a totally innocent tone. On dates? I don't even know. I was a bit dumbfounded at the question, seemed totally out of the blue. What, you don't want to go there with me? No, it's not about that. It's just not the most appropriate moment for that, Kagome. She mocked me. Well, yeah, that was obvious. If we can't come up with anything, then what's the point in hiding in one place and waiting for them to find us? But that doesn't mean we have to jump out into their hands ourselves, was what I wanted to respond with, but didn't. What if we don't get another chance? I stopped and looked at Kagome. She looked up into my eyes, and it felt so intense that I couldn't resist any longer. All right, fine, let's go. The fair! The amusement park was probably the last place they'd be looking for us. Why did you bring me here exactly? Kagome asked with surprise. That's what you wanted. All right. There weren't as many people here as I expected, and that made me feel a little tense. It's always easier to go unnoticed in a crowd. Relax already, Nico-san. Kagome noticed my condition. Stopped and looked around. Yeah, we're in the fair. The fair again. Do you want some candy floss? I don't like candy floss. Why? Because it feels like installation. Ugh, disgusting. Right. I giggled and immediately felt myself calming down. What would you usually do here? Have you never been to an amusement park? No. Kagome replied even too innocently and sincerely. Well, for example, there's the Ferris wheel. I waved in the direction of the wheel. Come on, it looks like something for kids. Are you afraid of heights? I teased her. Not at all. All right. I decided not to torture her any longer. There's a ghost house. Going there with Himitsu wouldn't be a good idea. That's boring. Do you want to shoot at targets from a rifle? I don't know how. Well, finally something you can't do. I flung my arms in the air and drooped down onto a bench nearby. People go on dates to have fun. Aren't we having fun? Kagome was doing everything wrong, and I began to doubt whether she really knew how to spend time with someone she loved apart from fighting for each other's lives. We don't like it here. No, I do. She sat down next to me and took me by the hand. It's very peaceful here. A clown walked by us and blew his horn right into my face. Clowns. I could never understand why they show them to children. Kagome laughed and held my hand tighter. Maybe we've just come here too early, when everything's over. Yes, when everything's over. I pulled Kagome to me and kissed her gently. Suddenly, it felt as if we were the only people alive in the world of the dead. As if we were in a zombie movie and had barricaded ourselves in a basement against the hordes of undead. Or were standing on this edge of a cliff and waiting in resignation for the monsters to throw us into the abyss. This feeling of helplessness was fueling my desire to achieve mental unity with Kagome. Wanted us to be close, but not only physically, but also spiritually. That seemed to be the only way I could find some sort of integrity and feel safe. Kagome responded to the kiss, but she was sluggish and reluctant, as if she were completely exhausted and had no strength left for intimacy. Maybe we should go away. Away, Nico-san? I mean from Tokyo. Let's return to that village. They wouldn't look for us there again. Let them hold my father hostage? I sighed heavily and lowered my head. A light breeze was sending a chewing gum wrapper somewhere on its wings. So cute. I know. Cute times at the fair. I really want to help your father, but we should think about ourselves too. About our life and our future. Won't be able to live with the guilt of just leaving him behind. But I involuntarily grimaced and turned away, pretending to look at something in the distance. Kagome's feelings were understandable, and it only hurt our relationship if I tried to argue her down. But I couldn't just sit and wait for God knows what. So I stood up and paced around in front of the bench. Nico-san, you don't have to go through all this with me, she said quietly. No way, you can jump from the ship into the sea. Is that how it goes? I recall a Japanese proverb. Nico-san, I'm already grateful you're trying. That's something I could never understand. What's the point in participating if the other team wins? You know, we have a saying, you can't put thank you in bread like it's butter. I can't keep myself warm at night with the thought that I tried, but I can keep you warm at night. Kagome smiled cutely without any hint of vulgarity. Unfortunately, that won't be enough to save your father. I was tempted to chastise Kagome for talking a lot, but doing nothing. Personally, it doesn't seem like something shameful to me to retreat, at least temporarily, even an untenable situation. Plus, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't experience the tragedy of the situation like she did. That wasn't my father we were talking about. But if we take a step back to take two forward, Kagome jumped off the bench and clung onto me. Nico-san, tomorrow we'll go to the corporation's building and tell him that I know everything. He can't just brush aside his own blood. You know, it won't work. My arms hung powerlessly along my body, and I turned my head to the side as far as I could to avoid looking at her. Then we can go to the police or we could tell the journalist that he had an affair. Kagome, enough. I carefully but insistently pushed her away. Us suffering won't help your father. On the contrary, if we don't upset Kobayashi-jun over time, he might come to his senses and release him. After all, he's his son-in-law. Of course I did not believe any of that myself. Obviously, family relations weren't the almighty CEO of Kobayashi Corporation's first priority. I suddenly thought that he could have well found Ellie's earlier than she had been, and if that was the case, have you ever tried any books by Lem? Who? What does that have to do with anything, Nico-san? Kagome started to get angry. Lem is the best when it comes to describing an extraterrestrial mind. Most sci-fi by other authors, human-like, guided by other laurels, that would be evolution to follow the path on different planets. Nico-san! I think with this Nico-san, I'm gonna call it there, guys. Next time, I'm not gonna end the stream until Kagome's roots are all done. That's a promise, maybe. Need a bit of fresh air. Yeah, I do. But yeah, tomorrow, guys, will be good. Tomorrow will be fun. Let's see the updates. Music! Oh, we got a thing here. Couple more to go here. Backgrounds. A couple more were definitely added. Oh yeah. And CG. We found a lot of CGs today, actually. Oh yeah, look at all of this now. Oh, we got a lot of CGs and stuff now. That's good. Alright guys, thank you all for stopping by. Tomorrow, let's finish Kagome's route. How does that sound, lads? Does that sound good? But yeah, thank you for stopping by, guys. Thanks, Moppy Babe, for sticking around and everyone here. Y'all be well, and I'll see you later. Bye!